The first-place D-backs have seen their lead shrink in the West, but Bucks gang pulled off a key deal today. In St. Louis, key additions and veterans have put Tony La Russa's club on top. They're getting ready in St. Louis. Jim Edmonds and the Cardinals struggling a bit. Winners of just 3 of their last 10, trying to reverse their fortunes tonight against the Diamondbacks. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday Night Baseball studios. I'm Dave Revson. We'll get you out to that ball game in just a moment, but there is some big news in Major League Baseball tonight, and it does involve one of the teams you're about to see. Arizona has picked up Curt Schilling in a trade from the Phillies. The ace goes to the D-backs in exchange for Travis Lee and 3 pitchers, Omar Dahl, Vicente Padilla, and Nelson Figueroa. So Arizona now with a great 1-2 punch with starting pitchers Randy Johnson and Schilling. Potentially could face those guys 5 times in a 7-game playoff series. One other deal to tell you about, Ishmael Valdez has been dealt from the Cubs back to the Dodgers in exchange for a couple minor leaguers. Now, some other NL Central news as we check out afternoon action. Stros, Reds. This one was 2-2 in the 6th, but Moises Alou takes care of that. This after Julio Lugo and Jeff Bagwell had homered earlier in the inning. The Stros turning a 2-0 deficit into a 3-2 win. They've won a season-high 5 straight games. They complete their first series sweep of the season. The Mets rained out against the Expos. That one rescheduled as part of a twin bill tomorrow at Chase starting at 12:15 Eastern Time. Braves and Marlins. Atlanta is on the board in this one. In the first, Wally Joyner with a man aboard, his 3rd of the year. That makes it 2-0 in favor of Atlanta, and that is where it stands right now. As we take a look at the National League scoreboard, you see Pittsburgh out on top of Milwaukee, and the Cubs also an early lead on the Phillies. Over in the American League, Tribe Jays. David Wells going for his Major League leading 16th win. Top of the 2nd gets Manny Ramirez swinging. He was 0 for 4. And Alex Ramirez on the breaking ball. He goes down as well. Wells getting some help from the defense in the 4th. Ramirez up there, lining one to left. Shannon Stewart on the run and just does hang on to make the catch. Now, bottom of the 4th, we're still scoreless, but Stewart did it with the glove and now doing it with the bat off Bartolo Colon. It is gone. 13th on the year. It's 1-0 Toronto. 4-1 Jays in the 6th. Brad Fulmer doing a number on Colon. His 2nd 2-run homer of the day. 20th of the year. 6-1 Jays. Now in the 9th, it is Wells trying to finish it off, and he does so with some nasty stuff, getting Travis Prime in there. 11 Ks for Wells. Improves to 16-3 lifetime against the Indians. He has a league-leading 5 complete games. 8-1 Jays is the final. The White Sox, though, unable to capitalize on the Indians' loss as Kansas City beats them 7-6. The White Sox were 1 strike away from winning this game, but Kansas City came back for the victory. Elsewhere, the Yankees on top of Baltimore. Oakland also a winner over Seattle, so they pull within 3 games in the AL West race. We've got a battle of first-place teams coming up from St. Louis. Diamondbacks and the Cardinals. Keep it right here. We'll take you out to the ballpark after a quick break.
Order all this food?
Yeah, anywhere.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Busch Stadium here in St. Louis, Missouri for tonight's Wednesday night telecast of baseball on ESPN2. We've got a couple of division leaders, the Cardinals in the Central and the Diamondbacks in the West, where things are not quite so comfortable right now. Just a 1-game lead over San Francisco, 2.5 over the Dodgers. The Diamondbacks right now have lost 3 in a row and 7 of 10. Things a little bit more comfortable for St. Louis in the Central. Cincinnati was beaten by Houston again today. They were swept by the Astros, and the Cardinals are out to a 7-game lead in the Central Division. But the big news here in St. Louis involves the visitors. The Arizona Diamondbacks, as we now know, have made a real splash. They went out and picked up Curt Schilling to join Randy Johnson in their rotation. Schilling, coming off arthroscopic shoulder surgery in the offseason, obviously is healthy now. He was a bit slow out of the gates, but in his last 8 starts, look at what he has done, averaging almost 8 innings per start. This is the Curt Schilling that everybody's come to know over the last few years. And as we we bring Rick Sutcliffe in on the conversation. This has really changed the landscape in the National League West.
Well, it sure has. Dan, I can't think but how amazing Arizona has been, though. They have hardly had Matt Williams. Matt Manti lost his job. Omar Dahl has been struggling. Todd Stottlemyre has been hurt, and yet they have still stayed in contention, largely because of Randy Johnson. Well, even the big unit last night started to feel the pressure of the Dodgers and the Giants coming after the Diamondbacks. 7 base on balls, uncharacteristic for him. He had been averaging just over 2 per 9 innings. Last night, he started to feel the pressure. I think the pressure's on the rest of the National League West now.
This team won 100 games last year, but they don't quite have the swagger this season. What does it do for the other 24 guys in the clubhouse to now know they've got Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling in the same rotation?
Well, it's almost like having guarantee win day 2 out of every 5 times you take them out. But I think more importantly, what it is exactly what it did last year when they acquired Matt Manti. When he came into the ball game at the end of the game, it was simply over with. They expect that now to Curt Schilling. When he starts, they win.
Cardinal news, no Mark McGwire tonight, and it's sounding more and more like this is not a short-term injury. They've talked about the possibility of surgery, maybe McGwire not coming back for a while. That patella tendonitis in his knee has become a real problem. He remains on the DL. J.D. Drew is also on the DL. It was expected he would be activated tonight, but that hasn't happened. Perhaps tomorrow night. So the Cardinals are shorthanded as well. But one area where they've got strength is in their starting rotation.
It certainly is. They are the only team in the major leagues that have had all 5 starters from the beginning up till right now. It's taken a lot of pressure off their bench. A big part of the reason they've got the commanding lead that they've got right now. But there's talk in their camp too. There's talk about Big Mac. It may be more serious than originally thought. David Segui is a name that they mentioned. Another name I heard in the clubhouse before the game tonight is Jason Kendall, the all-star catcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
And Darryl Kyle is on the mound tonight for the St. Louis Cardinals. Buck Showalter has to be pretty excited. He doesn't show it on the outside, but he's got to be very excited on the inside about the acquisition of Curt Schilling, who, by the way, is expected to make his first start for the Diamondbacks Friday night at Florida. Look at the starting lineup for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Jay Bell's not in the lineup tonight. Hanley Frias is in his second base. Bell's getting a few days off. He has struggled recently. Steve Finley is having a big season, and he's got a big career numbers against Darryl Kyle. Matt Williams not healthy, playing through a sore leg right now, and he is struggling. Danny Batista gets a start out in right field, where the Diamondbacks are juggling of people around, and Armando Reynoso is the starting pitcher for the Arizona Diamondbacks tonight. They are facing an 11-game winner and a guy who has to love pitching a little bit closer to sea level than he did out in Colorado, where he had a lot of problems. Darryl Kyle looks like a new guy.
Yeah, he certainly did. He only won 8 games last year, Dan. He's already won 11, and the biggest difference is another 11 that is in his statistics. It's 11 hit batsmen. I think that Darryl Kyle finally realized the people that succeed pitching pitch inside, and he got back to where he was in '97. He was a 19-game winner with Houston then. And how did he get back there? A lot of it because of the Cardinals pitching coach Dave Duncan. Part of it because of a conversation he had in spring training with Bob Gibson, talking about the former Cardinal great, and a guy that certainly knew about pitching inside.
Another big crowd here at Busch Stadium. The Cardinals went over the 2 million mark in attendance last night. And here is Tony Womack to get it started for the Diamondbacks. Womack with a blazing speed, but look at the on-base percentage. He has walked only 14 times all season, and not getting on a base as much as a good leadoff hitter needs to.
Take a look at him defensively. Even with 2 strikes, look at where Tatis and Perez are at the corners. The reason Womack has been getting on base a little bit more as of late is because he's been bunting for more base hits.
Kyle out in front as Womack waves at it. The tag will be applied, and on 3 pitches, Womack strikes out to begin the game. But he's not going to go quietly, saying that he got a piece of that ball, I believe, and then it hit the dirt, and Buck Showalter wants an explanation.
All Tony Womack wants home plate umpire Marty Foster to do is to get some help from somebody. See if one of the other guys saw the fact that he actually got a piece of it. He's going to say that he fouled that ball off, and give Marty Foster some credit. He's going out to check the baseball. Tony Womack is using a black bat. There should be a mark on that baseball. If he were to make contact, Marty Foster didn't find anything, and he's going to stick with his judgment.
You could tell from the replay that the ball changed direction, but it looked like it might have done that on the bounce in the dirt, as opposed to by making contact with Womack's bat. And obviously, Marty Foster, as you said, Rick, has stuck by his decision. And Buck Showalter's still not really pleased with it. Nothing like a little early controversy.
Well, Buck knows how important it is for the Diamondbacks to get the leadoff guy on. And when you're talking about a guy like Tony Womack that can fly, he gets on base somehow. It could turn to a double, possibly a triple, just with the stolen base from him.
Now, Womack has decided to give up the argument. He has gone back to the dugout, apparently accepting his fate. Buck Showalter not so quick to leave the scene. He should be in a pretty good mood right now. He got Curt Schilling today.
Well, he also knows it's a national TV game. He might as well pick up a little TV time.
And he was certainly doing that. And the crowd here at Busch Stadium starting to get awfully restless with this long argument. Not really a heated argument, but let's look again at the angle from center field.
No, I don't think he got any of that. I think not only did Marty Foster make it the right call, but I thought Mike Matheny, the catcher, did an outstanding job of keeping that ball in front of him. I'll guarantee you, if it gets by him and goes to the screen, Tony Womack doesn't argue that he fouled it off. He takes off for first base.
So Womack strikes out on 3 pitches to begin the game. And here's Hanley Frias, who looks at a pitch right down the middle for strike 1 called. Frias filling in for Jay Bell, who, as we mentioned, has struggled the last couple of weeks and sitting out for a few days. Big breaking ball from Kyle, and he's out in front of 2.
Really a short conversation before the game tonight with Jay Bell. I said, "Are you all right?" And he said, "Yeah," almost as if to say, "I don't know why I'm not playing either."
And it's funny when you look at some of the Arizona statistics. Their pitching is second in the league. Their offense is 9th. And in talking to a lot of their players in the clubhouse today, it's the lack of hitting, specifically clutch hitting, that most of them were talking about before the game. Wow, just inside as Darryl Kyle misses the strike zone for the first time tonight.
This, right along with the 11 hit batsmen this year, is what Dave Duncan was talking about, why Darryl Kyle was not successful and what he has to do to be successful on the inner half.
A 19-game winner with Houston before a couple of awfully tough years in Colorado. Came over to the Cardinals in an offseason deal that also brought Dave Duncan and Tony La Russa, their closer this year, Dave Veers. And Duncan and La Russa have been a duo for many, many years. Goes back to the curveball and strikes him out.
Defensively behind Darryl Kyle tonight, perennial Gold Glove winner out in center field, Jim Edmonds. Eduardo Perez at first base, filling in for Big Mac. It was Craig Paquette that had to fill in on the last minute notice at first base for Big Mac opening day against the Cubs. And in the bottom of the first inning, Paquette hit a 3-run homer.
Eduardo Perez made a couple of great plays defensively last night in the Cardinals win over the Diamondbacks. Here is Luis Gonzalez with 2 outs and nobody on. Been a big few days for Perez. Got to see his dad inducted into the Hall of Fame over the weekend.
Yeah, he said that Perez was a little bit low on body fluids, and that because of all of the tears that he shed watching the ceremony at Cooperstown and his father get to the Hall of Fame.
Now swinging a drive to deep right field, and Luis Gonzalez has hit one out to give the Diamondbacks an early lead. It's the 25th home run given up by Darryl Kyle this year as Arizona jumps on top.
Gonzo has been outstanding the last 3 or 4 years offensively. Up to that point, kind of a platoon type player, a guy that got moved around a lot, but he has found a home in Arizona because, as he said, the last couple of years, I just simply learned how to hit. Changed his stance a little bit, opened up a little bit more, developed some power, and has turned into an everyday player and an all-star for Arizona.
His 19th of the season, a 1-0 Arizona. Batter is Steve Finley, the center fielder, another guy who's getting better and better as he moves into his mid-30s now. The last few years for him have been the most productive years of his career. A few years ago, he was a guy with a great glove, could make a lot of plays, but didn't really scare you at the plate. But now he's on a pace for 40-something home runs. But Showalter juggling his lineup a little bit in the last couple of days, elevating Finley to fourth and dropping Matt Williams down to fifth. Inside, a 2-2 on Finley. Matt Williams, who broke a bone in his foot in spring training and has also been on the DL with a pulled quadriceps muscle. Still, that leg is sore and he's not able to push off very well, just not himself right now. Fair ball, and another good play by Perez, making a habit of this. So the inning is over, but it's the Diamondbacks who jump on top. Luis Gonzalez goes deep. It's 1-0 Arizona. Arizona 1 and the Cardinals nothing. Coming up in the bottom of the first inning, and we'll show you the St. Louis lineup that Tony La Russa is going to throw out on the field tonight. Remember, no Mark McGwire, out indefinitely with the sore knee. No J.D. Drew, could be activated as early as tomorrow, so they are short-handed right now. Vigna at the top, Renteria having a good season, Jim Edmonds loving St. Louis, and Fernando Tatis missed a couple of months with a groin injury, so he's only played in 42 games, but he's got 48 RBIs, including a grand slam last night off Russ Springer that turned the game around in favor of the Cardinals. Langford in left, Eduardo Perez filling in for McGwire. Thomas Howard gets to start in right field tonight. Mike Matheny doing the bulk of the catching this year for St. Louis. And Darryl Kyle is on the mound. Armando Reynoso, who has already beaten the Cardinals twice this year, gets the start for Arizona.
Yeah, his last start was a 4-3 win against St. Louis. Career 6-2 against the Cardinals, 4-0 in his last start against St. Louis with a fine 3.20 ERA.
He is a guy whose short-term future could be affected by the acquisition of Curt Schilling. Obviously, things are going to be juggled around. Schilling's expected to pitch on Friday night, and then perhaps again on Wednesday next week against Atlanta. And we'll have the Diamondbacks and the Braves for you on ESPN2. Leading it off for St. Louis, second baseman Fernando Vigna. Despite a hamstring problem, playing well. Look at his on-base percentage. The difference between Womack and Vigna, 90 points in on-base percentage.
He's a guy that will give Armando Reynoso a lot of trouble, mainly because he makes you throw pitches in the strike zone. For Reynoso to be successful, he's got to have movement out of the zone. If he throws the ball over the plate, his stuff not good enough to live there.
2 balls and a strike. He works slowly. He nibbles at the corners. Third start against St. Louis. 7 shutout innings his first time out, and then, as Rick mentioned, a win over them last week as well. He went 5, gave up 3 runs, and then the bullpen retired the Cardinals 12 up and 12 down in the last 4 innings to ensure the win. Vigna with a looper into right center, a base hit.
Take a look at him defensively out there. You got to start right off the bat with Steve Finley. He won the Gold Glove last year in the National League. The only guy older than him to win a Gold Glove in the National League is a guy named Willie Mays. Here's last night off the big unit. This ball actually would have left the ballpark, but look at the effort on the part of Finley. Matt Williams has said that it is tougher to play defense behind Randy Johnson than anybody he's ever played behind before, because you just don't expect the ball to be hit at you. Randy Johnson strikes out so many people. For Steve Finley to be able to make that play, it tells you just how good he is.
Real interesting in the last year or so with Finley getting joined in the National League. Jim Edmonds coming over from the American League and Ken Griffey coming over from the American League. All of a sudden you've got a number of outstanding defensive center fielders in the National League. Runner going, and it's a base hit through the left side for Edgar Renteria, and Vigna comes around to third.
Pretty consistent and always clutch. Edgar Renteria doesn't get a lot of hits, but gets a lot of big hits. He proved that back in '97 with the Florida Marlins when he got the game-winning hit in the final game of the World Series. And all he does right there, he just looks for something he can hit hard on the ground somewhere. The hit and run was on. Vigna not trying to steal second base. counting on the guy hitting second to protect him, and Renteria does that well.
And the Cardinals have set the table for the big fellas with runners at first and third, nobody out. Trailing 1-0 here in the bottom of the first inning, and Jim Edmonds coming up. Edmonds acquired right at the end of spring training from the Angels for Ken Bottenfield and Adam Kennedy, and fell in love with the city of St. Louis, and St. Louis fell in love right back. Signed to a 6-year deal, having a career season. Replaced Ken Griffey in the All-Star game with Griffey injured, and started the All-Star game in center field for the National League. On the inside corner, 1-1, and you can see from Edmonds' body language he didn't agree with the call.
Well, Reynoso is one of those guys where the home plate umpire and his strike zone is going to be very important to the success that Reynoso has on the evening. He's got to get a little bit on the inner and outer half for him to be successful. He just does not throw that hard nor have that much movement.
You've seen most of the pitches have been mid-80s, some in the high 80s. Hit well down toward the left field corner, and in there. It'll be a ground rule double for Edmonds that'll bring in Venus and a Renteria to third and tie the game.
Dan, I know that Reynoso has been throwing well as of late, but he also is a big part of the reason Arizona had to pull the trigger on that Kurt Schilling deal. Last year he was 10-6 on the year, but he started out 10-2 with a 3.74 ERA. But in the month of September, Armando Reynoso just ran out of gas. 0-4 with an ERA of almost 9, and because of that, he was left off the postseason roster that Arizona went into the playoffs with.
RBI number 69 for Edmonds. Ties the game at 1. Second and third, nobody out. And here's Fernando Tatis. Tatis last night hitting his 4th career grand slam. Broke the tie. St. Louis overcoming a 3-0 deficit early against Randy Johnson to hand Johnson a loss as he drops to 15-3. Just missing outside, a 1-1.
Well, that's that borderline pitch that Reynoso just has to have. This young Fernando Tatis just so impressive, not only in his tools, but his approach to the game. You got men on second and third, nobody out. Your job is to do something to the right side of the baseball field. Not only drive in the runner at third, but advance the runner at second to third so that Langford can hit with somebody there in less than 2 outs as well.
He has done a remarkable job picking up the slack for the St. Louis team that's been without McGuire on a number of occasions, is still without J.D. Drew. Ray Langford missed some time after his brother was killed a couple of weeks ago. He left the team for a while. Tony La Russa's pitching has been remarkably healthy, but the position players have missed some time. Langford for tragic family reasons, others for health reasons. Swing and a miss by Tatis as he opened up a little on that one. 2-2.
Well, it's Tatis's turn to pick up the St. Louis Cardinals because they picked him up when he missed a couple of months with that torn quadricep muscle. That's what baseball is all about. You get 25 guys pulling on the same side of the rope. You've got something that's pretty impressive, and St. Louis has had that for the most part all year.
They have led the Central for all but 3 days this season. Pops it up. And that is finally the first out of the night recorded by Reynoso as Tatis lets an RBI opportunity slip away.
Well, he got a little bit selfish here after the good approach to begin with. Now he swings at a pitch that's out of the strike zone. That's clearly a ball. Maybe a pitch that he could elevate out of the infield, but that's where Reynoso has to live. He has to live above the zone, below the zone, inside the inside corner, outside the outside. And he was able to get Tatis a little bit selfish there, not taking the base on ball that it looked like Reynoso was trying to give him. Tatis wanted to pick up that RBI and didn't get a pitch to do it with.
Now we'll see if they work carefully at all to Ray Langford with second and third, 1 out. Left-handed batter up and a righty next in Eduardo Perez. Just missed for ball 1.
Langford's going to get right on top of home plate, knowing that Reynoso doesn't have enough velocity to really jam him on the inner half. And he'll take that pitch on the outer half of the plate and pretty much make it in the heart of the plate for him because of how close to home plate he is, and he'll be able to pull that pitch.
Hits this one well into right center field, but it'll be caught. Tagging from third, Renteria will come to score. Advancing to third is Edmonds. Sacrifice fly for Langford gives the Cardinals the lead.
Reynoso makes a good pitch, but the problem is his velocity is only about 85, 86 miles an hour. If you throw 95 in that location inner half, you're going to have success. But Reynoso just doesn't throw hard enough. Langford knows that. And he's actually lucky that Langford hit it off the end of the bat a little bit, or there could have been more damage done.
42nd RBI of the year for Langford. It's the Cardinals 2 and the Diamondbacks 1 in the bottom of the first, as they have erased the lead given to Arizona by the Luis Gonzalez home run. Edmonds moving to third on that fly ball, and with 2 outs, the batter is going to be Eduardo Perez, who may be asked to fill in for a while for big Mark McGwire at first base. Nobody, McGwire included, can set a timetable right now for that knee problem. Yesterday, for the first time, McGwire publicly said as a last resort he would consider surgery. But he's been told apparently that if he were to undergo surgery, it's not a 4-week recovery thing. It's an end of the season kind of thing. And the last thing that McGwire wants to do is go under the knife in a season in which his team is in first place.
I think McGwire is the biggest reason the Cardinals made all of these acquisitions over the winter. They realized that he packed this ballpark. He provided a lot of revenue for them, and the one thing he cherished and wanted was a contending team. And the front office of the Cardinals went out and got that for him.
1-1 the count on Perez. Line drive right center and in there. It'll be cut off by Batista. Perez accelerating and heading for second. Out at second. Bang bang play at the bag, but give them a base hit and an RBI, and the Cardinals have a 3-1 lead through an inning here in St. Louis. 3-1 St. Louis leading Arizona. An eventful first inning, and Buck Showalter between innings was again out of the dugout, again talking to Marty Foster, the home plate ump.
Well, I think he just might be trying to work Marty Foster a little bit. The angles that we had clearly showed that Foster made the right call. It was a swing and a miss, but Marty Foster doesn't have the luxury we have of seeing it on television, replaying it 3 or 4 times. Buck could go out there and say, hey, you missed it, man. You took away our leadoff guy, and hopes that maybe Marty will be a little bit more generous later on in the game.
And it was a fairly civil conversation between the two between innings. Here's Matt Williams. Just last year drove in better than 140 runs, finished 3rd in MVP balloting in the National League, but again just crippled by injuries all season long, first to his foot, then to his leg. He's only got 137 at bats this year, and he's only driven in 7 runs. And you talked about it off the top of the show. Imagine if Williams were healthy. Imagine if Stottlemyre were healthy. This Arizona team, which is clinging to first place, imagine what kind of a year they'd be having.
Yeah, they could have run off and hid with it. But I was talking to Steve Finley before the game about Matt Williams, and he talked about that back foot, the right foot that Matt Williams broke in spring training. It's still not 100%. And Finley said he had that problem in '98 with the Padres. And he said it was just so inconsistent. One time you rely on that back foot so much to fire out when you go to swing the bat, that from time to time it's there for you. Then there's time that there's pain involved in there. So part of your thought process is, when I fire, am I going to feel pain or am I not? And right now, obviously, Matt's just not 100%.
Lines it out to second, and when things are going badly, even the line drives find the gloves. One out here in the second inning. Darryl Kyle of the Cardinals on the mound with a 3-1 lead right now. An 11-game winner on the season. His best year came back in '97 with the Astros when he won 19 games and had an ERA below 3. Career just over 500. Houston, Colorado, St. Louis. Probably a little bleary-eyed every now and again with 3-year-old twins, I would think. But he gave up a home run tonight to a guy who's got 2-year-old triplets in Luis Gonzalez. So if Gonzalez could make it to the ballpark, then Kyle could make it to the ballpark.
They might come to the ballpark just to rest. I got to go in early for extra hitting, honey.
Strike taken by Rubio Durazo, the Arizona first baseman.
And you can look, Durazo frustrated with Kyle hitting the inside corner with that pitch. And that's really the big adjustment Darryl Kyle has made. For the most part, been solid all year. A little how do you do? Thank you, Dave Duncan. Thank you, Bob Gibson, for reminding me that I need to do that.
Did it on an 0-2 pitch, too, to try and back him off the plate a little bit.
Normally followed by a good hook.
There it is, but he missed low. I asked Mike Matheny, who's catching tonight, about Kyle's curveball, and Matheny would have faced Kyle when he was with the Rockies in Colorado, but he also faced him in Milwaukee, and he said, what a difference in that curveball at sea level and at mile high. He couldn't believe how much less the pitch would break in Denver than it would on the road. As you can see, Colorado wasn't much fun for Kyle, but the Cardinals went out, picked up him in a trade, picked up Pat Henkin in a trade with Toronto, and signed Andy Bennis to get 3 veteran workhorses who have stabilized their rotation. And they added Garrett Stevenson, who's a double-digit winner, and young Rick Ankiel, who shows all the signs of greatness. Add him to Bennis and Henkin, those 2 guys in your picture right now. Not too many teams can compete with that rotation top to bottom.
A lot of things to be excited about here in St. Louis. Not only the veterans that have proven themselves, but the youngsters that are just going to get better. And Keel, Renteria, Tatis.
Swing and a miss by Durazo. 2 down. Let's go back to the studio and get an update. Here's Dave Revson.
All right, gentlemen. Zima takes us to Atlanta. Braves and the Marlins. 2-0 Braves in the second. Rafael Furcal chopper up the middle. The guy has great speed. He beats it out. Keith Lockhart scores. Trust me, it's 3-0 Braves. It's now 4-zip. Let's go back to Dan Ray.
How about a Wally Joyner contributing with a 2-run home run in that game?
Joyner with a big hit Sunday night in the ESPN game, and a 1-0 win, a shutout by Andy Ashby. Joyner drove in the only run.
Batter is Damian Miller with 2 outs and nobody on here in the Arizona second. Miller having a good season, getting more and more playing time, hitting .291. Good a pitch by Kyle, and he jumps out in front of 1 and 2. Miller and Kelly Stinnett have been splitting the duties behind the plate the last couple of years for the Diamondbacks. Working quickly. The 2-2 breaking ball fouled off as Miller scatters his teammates in that third base dugout. Kelly Stinnett wanted to make sure if he's called upon that the bat's ready. Never an idle moment, huh? Kyle tried to cross him up there, dropped down a little bit.
Normally a guy works on a new bat after the night before when he broke a couple.
Down low, and Kyle walks him. Coming up Sunday night over on ESPN, the team with the best record in all of baseball, the Chicago White Sox, led by Frank Thomas and Emaglio Ordonez, one of the rising stars in baseball, will take on the Anaheim Angels, one of the surprises this season, as they remain in contention in the wild card race and perhaps the American League West. Coverage begins with the baseball tonight, presented by Pep Boys at 7:30 Eastern. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com.
I think 2 of the biggest surprises in baseball, those 2 teams, the White Sox obviously, and the Angels being in contention with all the injuries that Mike Scioscia's team has had.
Breaking ball buckles Danny Batista as he looks at a strike.
The Angels traded Edmonds over here and got an 18-game winner from last year in Kent Bottenfield, but he has not pitched like he did here in the National League. Kent Hill has been out, just had so many injuries, and yet they're still right there.
Jason Dixon done, Kent Merker out. Tim Belcher was out early.
front 0-2 on to Batista, getting more playing time out in right field. Made a great diving catch last night. Right field, one of the unsettled positions for this Arizona team. Batista's done a very good job since he came over to Arizona. As you saw from the numbers, 344. He was picked up in a deal with the Marlins back in June for Andy Fox, a utility guy who about a year ago was handed the shortstop job. The Diamondbacks have been tinkering for the last couple of years. They traded away Tony Batista, who has since gone on to become a third baseman and a big-time slugger.
Ouch.
Yep.
Oops. That was a mistake.
31 home runs for Batista this year.
31 combined last year.
Out at second, Damian Miller is thrown out by Mike Matheny, who's done an outstanding job this year throwing out runners. It remains 3-1 St. Louis. St. Louis leading Arizona, bottom of the second. A rough first inning for Armando Reynoso, giving up 3 runs on 4 hits and only a runner trying to stretch a single into a double, resulting in the end of that inning. They were hitting him very hard. 10th Major League season, originally signed out of the Mexican League by the Atlanta Braves back in 1990, and he is a +500 pitcher in his career. But as you mentioned, we talked about it a little bit earlier, he's a guy that the Diamondbacks will skip every now and again, push back a day or two, generally pitches better on extra rest, although he's on extra rest tonight. It certainly wasn't the case in the first inning, but his role figures to change with the arrival of Schilling, and should Stottlemyre come back healthy, it might change even further. Thomas Howard, the right fielder, leads off the second inning for the Cardinals. J.D. Drew still at least a day away, hasn't been activated yet. Eric Davis sent home with the flu again, second day in a row. So Howard gets a chance to start. He hits a fly ball to deep right center field. Finley with just enough room.
Steve Finley's really amazing. The very first catch he made in the big leagues, he ran into the wall and separated his shoulder. Earlier this year in Houston, he ran into the left center field fence, and he said he thought he broke his back. He said he just went completely numb from the waist down as he hit the ground, but as he went to get up, everything was fine. He was able to throw it back in, obviously real sore. And then the play we showed in the first inning, running into the center field wall again last night.
One of the best as Mike Matheny comes up and takes a pitch outside for ball 1. Matheny, after spending last year as the backup in Toronto, is now the starter with St. Louis, in part because of a thumb injury to Eli Marrero. It's had him out for a while and will have him out at least another month. This is Matheny's 75th start, and this is the Cardinals' 100th game. The most that he's ever played, the most consistently he has ever played at the major league level. Hit a home run last night off Randy Johnson. We saw him throw out a runner in the top of the second, and Rick, he has now thrown out 54% of opposing base stealers this year.
Well, it wasn't for his offense that he was acquired, but last night that was a big 2-out, 2-run homer to tie the game off the big unit. It was his defense that Tony La Russa was impressed with, and in particular his fingers. Tony says the way he calls a game.
Randy Johnson with one of his worst outings of what's been a remarkable season. Shortest outing of the year, most walks. He drops to 15-3. Ground ball between third and short. It'll sneak through for a base hit.
This play right here shows you that Matt Williams is not 100%. Nobody has more range at third base than he has had the last 10 years. But it's almost like he's running on eggshells. Look at that first move right there. He could hardly make the pivot to turn. And now as he finishes up, he's just running so gingerly on not only both of those feet that he's on, but that quadricep as well.
He's just decided to try and play through the pain, and it's obviously a struggle for him right now.
Well, even at 75%, Matt Williams is better than anything else the Diamondbacks can throw out there, and most teams.
Darryl Kyle, the batter.
I think back to when Matt was on the disabled list to start the year, and I remember seeing him coming out early and putting up a chair. He had that big foot and had that right foot all in a big cast. just so he could play catch and keep his arm in shape. He was always in uniform. He always traveled with the team. And, you know, for a guy with a cast on his leg, any of us that have had that, you know, I mean, it'd be a lot easier to stay up in the clubhouse, hang out, kick your feet up. But no, this guy was in uniform on the bench doing what he could do for his ball club.
Kyle squares, pulls the bat back. And amazingly enough for Matt Williams, the broken bone in his right foot by fouling the pitch off, it's not the first time he's done it. He had the exact same injury on a foul ball back in 1995.
And it's equally amazing, it's not the front foot that he's fouling it off of, which most people do. It's the back foot.
Runner at first, Matheny, 1 out. Kyle gets the bunt down. Reynoso wants it, and the sacrifice will move Matheny into scoring position with 2 outs.
Little things like that in the National League can make the difference between a win and a loss. Darryl Kyle getting the sacrifice down. Let's say you don't get it down. Now all of a sudden they throw the guy to second. The pitcher has to be on the base path. But look at him faking right there. He's not giving it away that he is definitely going to bunt. That means that Durazo at first base has to stay put. That gives you room to get the bunt down in that direction, and your slow catcher who's on first base time to get to second base.
With 2 down for Fernando Vina, who singled and scored back in the first inning when the Cardinals scored 3 times. Line drive left field, caught by Gonzalez, and the inning is over. A much better inning for Reynoso. Through 2, the Cardinals 3 and the Diamondbacks 1. Back in St. Louis, this is not believed to be one of the official events, but the great outdoor games are coming your way beginning tomorrow night right here on ESPN2.
ESPN and ESPN2 have brought together the world's best
athletes in 4 sports, dogs among them, and it all begins tomorrow night and it runs through August the 6th. Back here in St. Louis, it's a 3-1 lead for the Cardinals, top of the 3rd. Darryl Kyle will face Danny Batista, Armando Reynoso, and then back to the top of the order for Tony Womack. And the guy who was in right field, or at least in the right field mix, back at the beginning of the season for the Diamondbacks, the former jewel of this organization, was among those included in the Curt Schilling trade today. Travis Lee is now a member of the Phillies organization. First baseman by trade, but had to move to right field with the development of Oridio Durazo. And now the Phillies have some decisions to make. They were already a little bit overloaded at first base and left field and corner outfielder types. They're going to have to make a couple more moves, it looks like.
Well, from what I saw of Travis Lee in right field, he looked outstanding. He's very athletic. I'm hearing that they're going to move him to left field, keep Pat Burrell at first base, which means what happens to Rico Brogna
and Ron Gant. Moves will have to be made, and Brogna's been in the rumors for a while. Buck Showalter, if you missed it, his team picked up Schilling today. They gave up Travis Lee, Vicente Padilla, good young reliever, Omar Dahl, a 16-game winner a year ago, who was working out of the bullpen this year, and pitcher Nelson Figueroa as well. Batista with a base hit into left center. So a 4-for-1 deal, and as a result, at least tonight, the Diamondbacks are a couple of arms short because Dahl and Padilla have moved on. Schilling is expected to start on Friday. And a little bit short in the bullpen tonight for Buck.
You know, talking with the front office people of the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Philadelphia Phillies were not the only organization interested in Travis Lee. There were a lot of organizations that called that wanted first baseman / outfielder of the Diamondbacks.
Reynoso, the batter, gets the bunt down. Kyle plays it to first. And both pitchers have executed the sacrifice here tonight. Well, the big news in the ballpark, obviously, the acquisition of Curt Schilling. Here is Arizona manager Buck Showalter.
Our organization's always been willing to take a chance, and taking a chance on people like Curt Schilling usually pan out. You know, it's tough saying goodbye to guys in the clubhouse, but I think that in order for our fans to be a part of hopefully something special, we need to do some things to stay up with what some of the other clubs are doing.
Take a look at the numbers of Curt Schilling. When you think about all of that after just having surgery to come back and be the power pitcher that he was before it, Well, that's got to be exciting for the fans in Arizona.
And again, in his last 8 starts, he has been overpowering. 4-2 with a 1.85 ERA, averaging 8 innings per start over that stretch. Tony Womack, the batter, will pop up on the infield. Schilling, as we all know, had a list of teams to which he would consent being traded, and he would say, trade me now, don't trade me now, maybe trade me now. Went back and forth in Philadelphia a number of different times, but he has some strong ties to the Arizona area. His family moved to the Phoenix area when he was 5, and he stayed here right through high school. Still has some relatives in the area, and the Diamondbacks, one of the teams that Schilling said yes, he would get traded to, and the Diamondbacks took advantage of that opportunity. Hanley Frias, the batter. And now you think Lavin Maddox, you think Leiter Hampton, Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling. It's tough to compete with that 1-2 punch.
It's just so easy, too, to fit in with this Arizona ball club. A bunch of first-class professionals, no egos. Basically gamers, guys that play the game hard. Last year, for the most part, their lineup was intact all year long. This year there's been some injuries that's kept people from being there, but in hopes of getting everybody healthy and make that final run August and September as strong as they did last year.
Facing a challenge from San Francisco and Los Angeles as well. Looks like it might be a 3-way race in the National League West. Frias with a fly ball into left field for Langford, and that's all. Good inning for Kyle. Coming up at the bottom of the 3rd, among those, Jim Edmonds has already doubled in a run here tonight. It's 3-1 St. Louis. Warm, but it is nothing like we've all experienced in St. Louis in July. It could be a lot hotter and a lot more humid than this. It's been a fairly cool summer to this point. Armando Reynoso on the mound for the Diamondbacks. Bottom of the 3rd inning. 3-1 St. Louis. Edgar Renteria, Jim Edmonds, and Fernando Tatis coming up here in the 3rd. And the first 2 of those guys, Renteria and Edmonds, were involved in the 3-run first. And to play right side and a quick 0-2 on Renteria.
Well, Buck Showalter and his pitching coach Mark Connor are really going to hold their breath here at this stage of the game, because Reynoso had trouble with this part of the lineup the first time around. Last inning he was able to get through the bottom part of the order with no problems, but they need him to get deep into tonight's ball game because, as you said, Dan, the lack of bullpen tonight.
1-2. The Diamondbacks had been carrying 12 pitchers. 2 of them just left in the trade. Schilling arrives Friday, so that will be 11, and that's where Buck Showalter ideally would like to be. They've still got a guy in the bullpen who can act as the long man, Mike Morgan, if they need to soak up some innings. He's the guy who will take the ball.
Yeah, but you could go with an 8-man staff, 9-man staff, and you've got Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling throwing complete games every other start.
Ground ball to the left side of the diamond. A long throw, not nearly in time with the speed of Renteria. He's got an infield hit, and he's 2 for 2 tonight. So the leadoff man is aboard for Jim Edmonds. Already a ground rule double to bring home a run tonight. It didn't take him long to sign that 6-year deal, and truth be told, it was below market value for the kind of player he is and the kind of season he's having. But as Tony La Russa told us before the game when we talked to him, so many guys get here. Mark McGwire was one of them. And you find out, why would you want anything else? You've got a city that just loves baseball, yet they're a pretty tolerant fan base. They're not as critical as fans in some of the other cities. They appreciate a good effort as much as anything. It's got a small town feel, but with some big market advantages as well. A team that can compete financially with some of the big boys. Edmonds trying to make do without McGwire and Drew, who have each been out the last 2.5 weeks. Tatis faring better recently than Edmonds has. A Southern California guy who grew up near Anaheim, played for Anaheim. They had a log jam, though. 4 outfielders for 3 jobs for a couple of years. Made the big deal right at the end of spring training. Chased it, 1-2.
Anaheim didn't want Jim Edmonds. From 95 to 98, he averaged 300, almost 30 home runs, 100 runs scored per year. But last year he was only able to play in 55 games for their ball club. So when they had to make a decision as to which outfielder was going to go, well, he was the choice they made. You talk about Edmonds coming back here for less. Mark McGwire signing back here in St. Louis for a lot less. You know, St. Louis has even mellowed Tony La Russa a little bit. Mark McGwire a couple of weeks ago, and ESPN the magazine was talking about how after a bad loss at Detroit, La Russa came in and just told the clubhouse guys no spread. They don't deserve to eat tonight. And Max said back in La Russa's earlier days, Tony in Oakland, he said he'd come in there and just throw things everywhere. Max said many times he went home with salad on his clothes.
There goes the runner. Throw throughs very high and an easy stolen base for Renteria, his 15th of the season.
You don't normally steal a base off Armando Reynoso. He's got one of the best pickoff moves for a right-hander ever in baseball. But Renteria does that. Look at him right there. Before Reynoso's foot gets down, Renteria has already taken 4 steps. Well, that gives Damian Miller absolutely no chance to throw him out.
Just the second stolen base against Reynoso this season in 100 innings. 2-2 the count on Edmonds. Runner at second, nobody out.
You know, just how a guy laying down a sacrifice bunt doesn't count as an official at bat on his stats. When a guy steals a base like that off the pitcher, it shouldn't go against the catcher. You know, they keep catcher's numbers. Oh, he's only throwing out so many people. Well, Damian Miller had no chance that time.
You saw his numbers, which are pretty good, up in the mid-30s. Edmonds lines a base hit into right field. Renteria is going to get stopped at third by Jose Oquendo, so it's Cardinals on the corners with nobody out. But it's not McGwire coming up. He's still out. We asked Tony La Russa for an update on a Big Mac's knee.
The MRI still is a very hot spot, so we're just going to continue to treat it. He's great about coming in early, doing all the work, but you need a crystal ball to know what's going to happen. And I mean, we're preparing for everything. If he doesn't play, the games still count. Our fans think we should win, so nobody's going to say, well, Mark was missing, so we have to deal with it.
I called the clubhouse this afternoon at 1:30, and Mark McGwire was already at the ballpark getting treatment on that knee in hopes that something is going to get better. But just watching Big Mac get up and down off the couch and up and down off the trainer's table, it doesn't look good.
He says, if anything, it's worse than 3 weeks ago when he went on the disabled list. Here's Tatis with another RBI opportunity. Tony La Russa half-jokingly talked about it maybe making him the most potent pinch hitter in the history of baseball, but the Cardinals need more than that.
Well, it's that back leg. Just like Matt Williams can't fire off it because of his foot, neither could Big Mac fire off because of that right knee.
One thing that La Russa did say, that if it is serious, he still thinks that the Cardinals have other more serious needs than replacing McGwire at first base. And he goes, take nothing away from McGwire, but whether it's Paquette or Perez, that they've got some pretty good backups. The Cardinals don't have a left-hander in their bullpen, and that's obviously a concern for a manager like La Russa. And a need that perhaps they'll address between now and, if not the first, certainly the second trade deadline. And again, behind the plate, you mentioned the name Jason Kendall a little bit earlier. Mike Matheny has been doing more work behind the plate than he's ever done in his big league career. Perez getting a chance to fill in at first. We've already seen some nice defense. You know he can swing the bat. He's no McGwire, but he's a pretty good fill-in.
Well, here's Tatis with an opportunity to drive in a run, just as he had back in the first inning. But Reynoso took advantage of him being over aggressive and got him to swing at something that was out of the strike zone. Got the pop up on the infield. We'll see if Reynoso can get the same thing done here in this at bat.
High fly ball to right field. Batista will make the catch, tagging, and coming in to score is Renteria. The throw will get away, but it's backed up by Williams, so Edmonds stays put at first, but to give Tatis the RBI. Make it a 4-1 as we go back to Dave Revson for another update.
Dan Zima taking us to Arlington. Anaheim battling Oakland in that wild card race. The A's won earlier. Angels out to an early lead, but Gabe Kapler taking care of that with a 2-run shot, his 8th of the year. So now it's 2-1 Texas. Dan?
Dave, thank you. And the tough news for the Rangers this week, obviously, the season-ending injury for Punch Rodriguez, the broken thumb on that freak play. And how do the Rangers feel about the next few days? David Segui's name has come up, perhaps even John Wetland. Is Texas going to be active on the market? There have already been 3 trades announced here today. The big one that we talked about, Kurt Schilling to Arizona. Ishmael Valdez has gone from the Cubs to, of all teams, the Dodgers. And Rob Ducey was traded from Philadelphia to Toronto. I wonder what Dodger fans are thinking when they first hear that Kurt Schilling goes to Arizona. Then within an hour, I would say, they announced that Valdez is going back to L.A. He's a starter, but he's not a Schilling.
Yeah, I might have held off on that announcement. Might have done that 2 or 3 days from now. Let that dust settle.
4-1 Cardinals, bottom of the 3rd. Edmonds at first with 1 out. The batter was Langford.
This is really a time of the year, too, where the general managers get to find out just exactly what kind of talent they do have. There's a saying in the horse business called being barn blind. You think that what you have in your stable is a little better than what everybody else thinks. But when the GMs start calling and they want this guy, they want that guy, when you're able to make those deals. A lot of people called about Travis Lee, and I think he was really the key in that trade.
So out in front 0-2 on Ray Langford, delivered a sacrifice fly back in the 1st inning. What's changed it so much too is that so many more players this year have no trade clauses or limited no trade clauses, and there are so many teams who can't afford to go after guys who make a lot of money. Not much of that was an issue 15 or 20 years ago.
Well, and then you get into all the contracts too. You know, you sign a guy and you trade for him during the middle of a multi-year deal, and now he can become a free agent at the end of that year. I think back a couple of years ago when the Dodgers made the trade for Jeff Shaw, and they didn't realize that they did that during the middle of a multi-year deal. He did become a free agent at the end of the year, and right up until that point, they had to give him a lot more money than what they had thought. So.
Sure looks like it's not done yet. It's still a full 5 days before the initial trading deadline of July the 31st. Joe Garagiola Jr., the GM of the Diamondbacks, talking about 2 series with the Dodgers in September, 2 series with the Giants, and only 2 off days in the last 3.5 weeks as the major motivating reasons for going out and getting Kurt Schilling. Plus the fact that he is signed beyond this year. He signed it through next season at what is really a below-market contract, about $6.5 million. And a guy of Schilling's ability these days could be making millions more than that. Edmonds a very short lead over at first base. Swing and a miss by Langford. 2 down.
Can't help but think about how motivated Kurt Schilling is going to be when he puts that Diamondback jersey on. He just went from a team, the Philadelphia Phillies, that were 16 games out of first place in last place, to a team that's got a 1-game lead right now coming into play this afternoon. I mean, how many times can you gain 17 games over one night?
How many did you gain back in 1984?
About 30. Cleveland was really struggling, and there were the Cubbies up there with a 4-game lead. I mean, you just sleep a lot better when those things happen.
Eduardo Perez, an RBI single his first time up, and then thrown out trying to stretch it into a double. And then, of course, you've got to feel for the other guys. Omar Dahl, who was a big part of this Arizona team last year, won 16 games, struggled tremendously this year, had an ERA of about 7, was bumped to the bullpen. Now he goes to Philadelphia, presumably to go back into the rotation. Base hit through the right side for Perez. He's 2 for 2. Edmonds up to second.
Right now is where General Manager Walt Jocketty could have been on the phone with the GM of the Texas Rangers, Doug Melvin, talking about a deal for David Segui. Segui could come over and play first, could do a lot of things. He's a guy that can play the outfield if Big Mac comes back. But then you watch Perez get another base hit, and you go, well, Doug, I'll call you back later, all right? You know? I'm just guessing. I don't know how those things.
I think you're tampering is what you're doing. 2 on and 2 out for Thomas Howard. But you're right. Is it better to have too much or too little? The Yankees feel it's better to have too much. Go out and get everything you need to get and worry about it later.
That's because Joe Torre is so good with his players. I mean, he's just honest with you. He'll tell you that I'm playing this guy because of this or that, whatever it might be. This is the reason you're not playing. And whether he's right or he's wrong, they respect the fact that he's honest with them. And there just never seems to be any problems in that clubhouse.
Reynoso getting hit pretty hard tonight. He's already given up 4 runs on 8 hits through 2 2/3.
This is a thing, too, that kind of bothers the Diamondbacks, in particular a lot of their everyday players. You just see how slow and methodical Reynoso has gotten in this inning. He gets a guy on base, and he'll throw over 4 or 5 times. He'll step off. He'll go 2-0. He'll go 0-2. And the next thing you know, it's 3-2. And it's just tough to play defense when you're not anticipating the ball being hit at you.
Line drive, center field, base hit. Edmonds will score. Perez around to third. An RBI single for Thomas Howard, and it's 5-1.
You know, Dan, this is exactly the situation I'm talking about. I'm not saying Steve Finley always makes this play, but if you're anticipating the ball being hit at you, he might have been able to get a little bit closer to it and maybe an all-out dive come up with that play. But when you're constantly on your heels and the guy's going through a 15, 20-minute inning, it's just tough to be ready to go on every pitch when there's nothing happening.
2 runs in the inning, 2 on with 2 out. Mike Matheny comes up. Again, to re-emphasize the point, because of the trade, 2 Arizona relievers have left the team, Omar Dahl and Vicente Padilla, so they're a little bit short in the pen. And Reynoso probably making Buck Showalter a little bit nervous, as now there is some activity out of the Diamondbacks pen. And there's the ageless wonder, Mike Morgan, with his 12th major league team. That's a record for any North American professional sport. 12 different teams. Started way back in 1978, a week out of high school, and now here he is pitching into his 40s. Mike Matheny had a base hit his first time up. Loses the bat. Good concentration by Matt Williams to come up with the ball and force Howard to end the inning. But Howard drives in a run. Tatis drives in a run, and it's 5-1 Cardinals. Back to St. Louis. Dan Schulman and Rick Sutcliffe with you. It's the Cardinals out in front of the Diamondbacks 5-1 heading to the 4th. Darryl Kyle has been very sharp for St. Louis, and Armando Reynoso has been anything but, as the Cardinals jumped on him for 3 runs on 4 hits in the first, 2 runs on 4 hits in the third. Here's Luis Gonzalez, responsible for the only Arizona run tonight with his 19th homer of the season back in the first inning. Third ball just missed, and it's 2-0. Gonzalez thought it was a little high. 2-1 the count from Kyle.
I can't help but think about that game last night in which it looked like the Diamondbacks were going to win. 3-run lead, the big unit on the mound. And St. Louis came back and got it. You know, championship teams do that. I mean, they win games that they're supposed to lose. Tatis with the grand slam homer last night. Take a look at ball 4 to Gonzo there. But, you know, the St. Louis Cardinals have to feel pretty good about the position they're in right now. Their closest rival, the Cincinnati Reds, wanted to trade their captain, Barry Larkin. They did trade their #1 starter in Denny Nagel. So you can't feel like Cincinnati's getting any better. So St. Louis has to be in pretty good shape.
And at the same time that St. Louis was coming back from a 3-0 deficit last night, Cincinnati was blowing a 3-0 lead, lost to Houston, lost to the Astros again this afternoon. They were swept by Houston. And the Cardinals, coming into this game tonight, have a 7-game lead in the National League Central. The minute standings here at Busch, and really none of the other teams a factor in that division. Only Cincinnati if they could make a late run. Cardinals trying to get to the playoffs for the first time since 1996, and as you mentioned, trying to capitalize on Mark McGwire being here, because who knows how long he will continue to play. He is signed through next season, but he has said repeatedly if there's a work stoppage at the end of the 2001 season, which unfortunately is a possibility, that he's just going to walk away. That's it.
Good for Matt. You know what? He said he was going to boycott the All-Star game if his teammate Jim Edmonds did not make it. And you know what? He's right in both cases. Players are making enough money. Things are fine with the owners now. Get it to where teams can contend a little bit more often. All will be well in baseball.
Ground ball to the right side. Avina on to Renteria and back to first. What a nice double play.
St. Louis Cardinals last year had 19 errors from the second base position. Well, only 2 errors thus far on the part of Fernando Vina. Not only have they got the leadoff hitter that they needed, they got the defensive second baseman they wanted. Look at the good strong throw to Renteria. Renteria telling Luis Gonzalez, you got to get down because I got to make this throw. It's off a good one and just able to double up Steve Finley.
Two down, nobody on for Matt Williams, who lined out to second his first time up. Darryl Kyle's allowed to just 2 hits through 3 2/3. He's got a 5-1 lead, looking for his 12th win of the season. And I can't help but think, when you look at Williams and how he's struggling now, how history might have been different had there not been a work stoppage back in 1994. And although Mark McGwire might still hold the record now, how it just might have been Matt Williams who broke Roger Maris's record. He had 43 home runs with 50 games to play when the strike hit in 1994. Pokes it into right field and right at Thomas Howard. That'll be all for the Diamondbacks in the 4th. Good pitching and a good defense from the Cardinals tonight, and they've got a 4-run lead. Thank you. And again, the Dodgers reacquiring Ishmael Valdez. Devon White's now off the disabled list, and the National League West is one of the tightest divisions in baseball right now, with the Diamondbacks clinging to a 1-game lead over the Giants. Giants are in San Diego tonight. The Dodgers right now leading Colorado. Remember, Colorado made a real charge a few weeks ago and got right up neck and neck with the Diamondbacks. They were actually percentage points ahead of Arizona back at the beginning of this month, but have since gone into a tailspin. Darryl Kyle leading off the bottom of the 4th. It looks like there's the potential for a real fun the last couple of months of the season, with maybe 3-team races in the National League West and American League East, maybe American League West, and wild card races in both leagues. Two on Kyle.
I can't help but think about the job Dusty Baker has done with those San Francisco Giants. What was it, 6 weeks ago? They were 9 games out. They really didn't make any player changes. There wasn't anything really big that happened there. They got Ellis Burks back. They got Barry Bonds back. And they're good. Rob Nin has just been unhittable the last couple of months. Felix Rodriguez, their setup man, came in the other night throwing 100 miles an hour.
The Diamondbacks, as you can see, were the class of the division early, but have struggled since. As Kyle draws the walk, Reynoso walks the pitcher to lead off the inning. That's the first walk that he's given up tonight, and you can see how he feels about it. Well, the Diamondbacks getting a shot in the arm at the right time, announcing the Curt Schilling deal today. Armando Reynoso hasn't been very good. Randy Johnson had perhaps his worst outing of the season last night, so this comes at a good time for him.
Yeah, it really does. You know, when you think about what Randy Johnson does for that ball club, I mean, the night before he pitches, Buck Showalter can just unload his bullpen. You know you're going to get 7, 8, maybe a complete game out of the unit if you need it. And then what happens the night after Randy Johnson has pitched? Well, you're right. That bullpen is fresh once again, and now he's got all of his bullets to fire to try to win those games. I think guys like Randy Johnson, guys like Pedro Martinez, and Curt Schilling, when he's right, are the few pitchers that deserve MVP votes. Those pitchers, they just are involved in 1 game out of every 5. Those guys help you win 3 out of every 5.
And that's why Johnson and Schilling are not going to pitch one after the other, at least as it stands right now. Ground ball out to second, flag down by Frias, and they'll just get the lead runner. The plan is for Curt Schilling to start on Friday, and then Randy Johnson to start on Sunday with Brian Anderson in between them. That's the way it stands right now.
Well, that's unfair. I mean, you got a left-hander throwing 100. Follow that up by Brian Anderson, a left-hander that will throw anywhere from 78 to 88, normally hitting every number in between. And then you got a right-hander throwing 100 the next day after that. That's not right.
And imagine if Todd Stottlemyre can somehow come back from the elbow problems in September. He can be a real force.
Don't count him out either. I mean, he will just find a way to get back out there on the mound in September.
As competitive as anybody in the game. Remember the rotator cuff problems a year ago, and he said, I'm not having surgery. I'm going to strengthen every muscle around the shoulder so I can keep pitching. And he threw some good games at the beginning of this year, coming back from the shoulder problems, but then the elbow problem started, and he's back on the DL. Good night already for Renteria. Couple of singles, couple of runs scored, a stolen base. And the Cardinals are clicking on all cylinders here tonight. Vina at first, 1 out in the inning. Vina with 8 steals on the season. He's been caught 5 times. Reynoso keeping an eye on him. Vina not quite running as much as he normally does because he's still favoring a bit of a hamstring problem. Cut by Renteria, 1-1. Mike Morgan was up behind Reynoso in the 3rd. When Reynoso got out of it, Morgan sat down, and the bullpen is quiet now here in the 4th. Probably wouldn't need long to get ready a second time.
This is basically what happened in the bottom of the 3rd inning when Reynoso had trouble. He's thrown 2 pitches to the catcher. He's made 3 throws to the first baseman here since Vina grounded into the fielder's choice.
1-2.
3-3.
We keep score differently.
Where's this? Well, I just think about the defense out there. I just think about how tough it is to play defense when you're not expecting the ball coming at you. You tend to get back on your heels a little bit, start looking around.
We mentioned earlier how good the pickoff move is, and only 2 stolen bases against him the entire season. How do you balance those numbers against the fact that the defense is standing around not doing much of anything?
Well, I think you've got to recognize the situation. Vina certainly could run, but we talked about the hamstring injury. He's not at 100%. Just make him stop. Take a look at him. All right, does he stop? Now you go, because you've got a catcher with a great throwing arm. Just give him a chance. It's all the head bob, you know. He's throwing his head up and then looking over, and then, you know, I mean, Vina's not going there. Now, if you throw over there one time and he just gets back in front of it, well, now you might go back again. But he wasn't going that last time. Now you step off. I mean, it's just tough. It's just tough for people to play defense behind that pace. A lesson for all young pitchers.
There he goes. Swing and a miss. Throw through. And they got him at second. They'll strike him out, throw him out, double play to end the inning. Cardinals are gone in the 4th, but still lead Arizona by a score of 5-1. welcome back to St. Louis, where the Cardinals have a 5-1 lead on the Diamondbacks heading to the 5th here, trying to make it 2 in a row over Arizona with one more game to come tomorrow night between these two teams. Joe Garagiola Jr., the general manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks, made a big splash earlier today. May have even outdone the likes of the Nagel and Justice acquisitions by the New York Yankees, because the Arizona Diamondbacks, if you missed it earlier, acquired Curt Schilling from Philadelphia today for 4 players. First baseman outfielder Travis Lee, left-handed pitcher Omar Dahl, reliever Vicente Padilla, and starting pitcher Nelson Figueroa. And you talked a lot about Lee, but I know you think Padilla is a real key to this deal as well.
What a good arm he's got. Good live fastball. He's one of those guys that could come back and haunt the Arizona Diamondbacks. Curt Schilling getting towards the end of his career. He's probably got 3 or 4, maybe 5 good years left, but Padilla's one of those guys might be around for 10. I can't help but look at the third baseman of the St. Louis Cardinals, Fernando Tatis. A couple of years ago, the Texas Rangers in the hunt. They acquired Todd Stottlemyre and Royce Clayton to give them that strength to make a stretch run, but they gave up Tatis to do it, and that's a mistake.
2-1 on Durazo, now 2-2. You got to look at Greg Swindell up in the pen. It looks like he's coming in. Well, and even more extreme examples. Jeff Bagwell was a young player traded away in July from Boston to Houston for reliever Larry Anderson. And John Smoltz was a young pitcher traded away.
Doyle Alexander.
Detroit. But if you go on to win your division, or if you go on to make it to or win the World Series, then in the end, was it worth it? The Diamondbacks say yes. And it is frightening if they make the postseason to think about opposing them in the playoffs, and to think about in a 7-game series this guy starting 1-4-7, and maybe Schilling starting 2-5, or in a 5-game series in the first round having Johnson and Schilling start 4 of the 5 games between them. Fly ball into center field, and Durazo is retired. Let's go back to the studio. Dave Revson's got an update.
L.A. and Colorado, 3-2 Dodgers, still in the first, and we've got controversy. Jeffrey Hammonds with 2 on, launching one, and the fan reaches out. They call it a homer. 16th of the year for Hammonds, despite the clear interference. It still stands 5-3 Rockies.
Well, Jeffrey Hammonds is having a remarkable season. Didn't need any help, but he got it there as Colorado takes the lead on Carlos Perez and the L.A. Dodgers. The ups and downs of getting the fans closer to the game.
How about Jeffrey Hammonds, too? A platoon player most of his career, the last 3 or 4 years. Found himself in Atlanta as a member of the National League All-Star team. The injuries had something to do with that, but a fine year nonetheless.
Breaking ball down and away, 1-2 the count on Damian Miller. A little health and a little change of scenery doing wonders for Hammonds.
And a little altitude help.
Yeah, that's true.
If that ball is just almost out of Coors Field, where is that at here?
Pop up to short. Slashed into right field. Thomas Howard backpedaling to make the catch. 2 down. A week from tonight, more baseball coming your way. It begins at 7 Eastern over on ESPN. The Chicago White Sox, led by Big Frank Maglia Ordonez and a great young pitching staff. They'll take on the Texas Rangers, or regionally, it's Cleveland and Tampa Bay. Then on the West Coast at 7 Pacific time right here on ESPN2, the Atlanta Braves and the Arizona Diamondbacks. And if the Diamondbacks are true to their word and Curt Schilling starts Friday, he could or should start on a Wednesday in that game. Great play down at third by Tatis. Danny Batista is retired. The Diamondbacks are gone, and Tatis, among others, coming up this half inning for the Cardinals. Mark McGwire not active, but making his first appearance in the Cardinal dugout tonight. The right knee still a problem. As you said, he's not moving around all that well inside, and there is no timetable for his return. He's as frustrated as anybody, because with all the personal accomplishments the last couple of years, the Cardinals haven't been a playoff team. Now they've got a great opportunity to play in October, and he doesn't know if he can be a part of it. Jim Edmonds leading off the 5th. To the Cardinals' credit, when McGuire has been out, they haven't rolled over. They're a better than 500 team this year with Mark McGuire out of the lineup. In some of those games, they've also had J.D. Drew or Ray Langford or Fernando Tatis or a combination of those guys out of the lineup all at the same time. Back to the mound, and Edmonds is retired for the first out of the 5th.
I'll tell you what, when you look at those numbers, you can realize also more of the strength of Tony La Russa. All he was talking about before the game tonight was the fact if they win tonight, they win the series. We've got one. You win 2 out of 3 every time you go out. You're in great shape at the end of the year. Tony wasn't talking about woe is me. Big Mac, we don't know if he's going to be back. Eric Davis not even at the ballpark tonight. He's got flu-type symptoms. They don't know how long that'll be for him. Tony talking about winning a ball game. And I mean, he was talking loud to all the players, too. It wasn't a meeting. It was just, hey, we can win a series with a win tonight.
0-1 on Tatis, who's popped up and had a sacrifice fly. Tatis now with 49 RBIs. This is his 43rd game of the season. As roughed up as the Cardinals have been amongst their position players, to have the same 5 guys make every single turn in the rotation all season long is a luxury no other team has had this year. And then they've got Matt Morris and Alan Benish back from a couple of years of arm problems, and they're kind of laying in the weeds, doing middle relief, long relief, and ready if needed to move into the rotation. Stevenson's contributed double-figure wins already for the Cardinal cause this year. Three starters with 10 or more wins, and then Pat Hennigan's got 9. Stevenson got off to a great start, pitched well last night.
Well, Rick Ankiel with the lowest number of starts, only 18 on the year. He's a 7-game winner right now, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see him reel off 7 or 8 here in the second half.
Tatis with some patience, drawing the walk. Well, back to Mark McGuire, so he's out indefinitely. Asked Tony La Russa about an urgency to replace him.
There are other moves we need to make before we try to improve our first base, because we can play at first base with other guys that are very good players. I'm not going to disrespect Mark. I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time, so we're not better without Mark, but what we're thinking about for the 31st is not necessarily let's patch up first base first. We need other things.
And the most commonly discussed or rumored other things would be, as we mentioned, there's no left-hander in the Cardinal bullpen. They have 3 in the organization, but all 3 are hurt right now. Scott Wadinsky, Jesse Orozco, Mike Matthews. 6 righties down in that St. Louis bullpen, and also, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, maybe another catcher to help out Mike Matheny. I just can't see a manager like Tony La Russa going into September, October without a left-hander down in that bullpen.
Sure ties your hands against certain ball clubs, particularly late in the game when you get down to the bottom part of the lineup and you have your pinch hitters in order. And Tony just basically has to throw somebody out there and hopes that they can do the job. He doesn't have the opportunity to manage as the other guy does.
Way outside, a 2-1 on Ray Langford.
Well, I can't help but look at those numbers from Mark McGuire, hitting over 300, only played 70 games, 220 at bats, 30 home runs already, 69. Remember when 25, you'd say a guy, he's a 5'2" guy, he's got power, he can hit 20 home runs a year. I mean, that was big. Big Mac's bigger.
2-2.
I mean, he has just completely changed the game of baseball. Right? Jeff Bagwell down in Houston 2 years ago talking about, you know what, I've got to do more. He had 35 home runs, 140 some RBI. He said that's not enough. There's a guy in St. Louis that is doing that right there, hitting 70.
The standard used to be 30 homers and 100 RBIs. If you could do that year after year, you were one of the elites. Now that's end of July.
I remember talking too about you take the number of runs scored, the number of RBIs, add it up and subtract the homers so that you don't count them twice. And if you get to 150, you've got yourself a terrific offensive player. Well, that number's gone up.
Working away to Langford. Back-to-back walks issued by Reynoso here in the 5th. Checking on the progress of the bullpen. Morgan was up in the 3rd. Swindell was up after the 4th. And now Dan Plesac's going to get up.
Usually when a pitching coach has a mechanical thing or just a piece of advice, he'll come running out there, get it to you, and then get back to the dugout so that your arm can stay loose. You don't have any time to stiffen up, and you go get the hitter. That's not the case here. Kind of realizing that Armando Reynoso's gas tank might be running on reserve right now. Took his time walking out. He's taking his time with the conversation. Going to make the home plate umpire Marty Foster come out. And then he'll take his time going back. And by then, most relievers will be ready to go.
Connors had his say as he makes his way back, and Plesac continues to throw with a purpose out of the left field bullpen. A rough one for Reynoso, having come into this game, having beaten the Cardinals last week and beaten them earlier in the season. And it's been a much different story here tonight. One other thing to notice is that Reynoso is due up first in the next half inning. So if they can get him through this half inning, it will save them from burning an extra player. But Reynoso here is facing Eduardo Perez, who's already got a couple of base hits off him. Up in a very shallow left field. Gonzalez calls off Womack to make the catch. 2 down. The St. Louis Cardinals find themselves 3rd in major league attendance right now. We mentioned that they went over the 2 million mark last night. Only Cleveland and San Francisco are outdrawing the St. Louis Cardinals. There's Thomas Howard. Brings back from ball 1.
Well, this has really kind of been the norm for Armando Reynoso during the course of this year. 6-2 at home at Bank One Ballpark in Arizona. ERA just over 4. But completely the opposite on the road. 1-4 with an ERA over 7. And that ERA looks like it's going to go up as far as his road numbers are concerned. You wonder, well, what makes that? I mean, home plate's still the same. It's still the same distance from the mound. I know in a lot of cases it's who you play on the road and who you play at home. You're playing a team that's 30 games under 500. It doesn't matter where you're playing. Playing a team like the St. Louis Cardinals, 3rd in the National League in offense. Well, you're going to have problems.
3-0. Already a couple of walks this inning, and now a pitch away from loading the bases. Testing the patience of his manager. Taking all the way is Howard. It's 3-1. He's had a fly ball to center and an RBI single tonight off Reynoso. A drive to deep right center field. It'll find the seats. A 3-run shot for Thomas Howard blows it open.
LaRussa talking about the offense without Mark McGwire. Well, he's got people that can fill in that position. They did opening day. Craig Paquette filling in for Big Mac at the last minute with a 3-run homer. Thomas Howard with 2 pinch hit homers this year. Sean Dunston with a couple as well. They've just got a lot of weapons, not only that they put out there on an everyday basis, but that Tony LaRussa can go to when somebody needs a rest, when somebody's hurt, or when he's trying to win a ball game late in the game.
8-1 St. Louis. Mike Matheny the batter. Even some real big players as you look at Thomas Howard's shot, and he knew it right away. Everybody knew it here.
Well, again, it was something that was centered in the plate. For Reynoso to be successful, he's got to expand the zone, and he's not been able to do that tonight.
Other players, Keith McDonald, a catcher who has since been returned to the minors, homered in his first 2 major league at-bats, the first National Leaguer ever to do that. Chris Richard, an outfielder who's still with the team only because J.D. Drew is out, homered in his first major league at-bat. In fact, in the first pitch that he saw a couple of weeks ago. So they are getting contributions from everywhere. The Cardinals lead the National League in home runs, and they are second to Toronto in the major leagues, and both of those teams threatening to erase the major league mark set by Seattle 3 years ago. And that's with McGwire missing about, I think it's 29 games this year. They are still well in front of the National League.
Buck Showalter trying to get this last out here in the bottom of the 5th by Reynoso because his spot in the lineup is due up first in the top of the 6th. You don't want to bring in a reliever and then lose that reliever, particularly when you're as short as Buck is tonight. No question he's ready down there in the pen, but at this point in the ball game, 8-1, Buck's just got to hope that Reynoso can get this out before there's any more damage done.
They're running up a phone bill tonight between the dugout and the bullpen. 3 relievers have been up. Plesac obviously ready if needed. And now he's going to get up, it looks like, for the 2nd time in this inning. Eight to 1 St. Louis. 3-2 the count on Mike Matheny. And another walk. 3rd of the inning, 4th of the night, given up by Reynoso.
You know, one thing that makes this easy for Buck, if this was a home game, he'd have to go get Reynoso right now because the crowd would just be so impatient. But what bothers Buck right now is that he too knows this game's being watched on national television. And he's just hoping everybody understands that his hands are tied right now. And he's doing what's best for his ball club, not what's best for tonight's game.
Darryl Kyle's up. 2 good plate appearances for him tonight. A sacrifice in the 2nd, a walk in the 4th. Reynoso doesn't generally walk a lot of people. 28 on the season and coming into this game tonight. But he's walked 4 of the last 9 batters to come up.
Almost to a man, you can look at the defense behind Reynoso, and in between pitches, they're just kicking the dirt underneath them. All of them looking down, looking around. Matt Williams got his back to the home plate, looking at Luis Gonzalez in left. Danny Bautista looking down. All of the grass that he's been killing out there.
Finally, the inning is over. 3 walks in the inning and a big 3-run home run by Thomas Howard. The Cardinals lead 8-1. A pinch hitter has come up in Reynoso's spot. Craig Counsell will lead off the 6th inning against Darryl Kyle. Counsell got a start at 2nd base last night for Jay Bell. It's Henry Frias in there tonight. Now it's back to Greg Swindell. Well, they're getting their work in out there. Plesac's been up twice. Swindell's been up twice, and Morgan was up earlier. 0-1 the count on a counsel.
Well, you just think about what it would be like if you had a staff that struggled like Reynoso did out there tonight every night. What it would be like on a bullpen. Why some bullpens are strong at the end of the year and some wear down. Well, that's where a guy like Randy Johnson becomes so important. I mean, there are nights that Randy Johnson pitched, a lot of nights, where the bullpen's not even used. I mean, the phone doesn't even ring. He's so dominant. Darryl Kyle can be that same kind of guy. You take away 3 outings that he's had this year. One of them was in his return to Colorado.
Grounded out to second. Nice play by Vina for the first out. Back to Dave Rexon.
Thank you, Dan. We check in on the Yankees and the Orioles at Camden Yards. This in the 8th. Bernie Williams. The drive, and is it gone? Well, it was, but the umpires say no. Williams ends up with a triple. We'll take a look at this one again. Bernie later scored on a David Justice single. Look, it hits that piping behind the wall. Should have been a homer. As it is, he did score. It's 4-1 Yankees.
What an incredible effort out there. I think that it was Luis Matos out in center field for the Orioles. Williams ends up with a triple. He's having an MVP type season, and the Yankees are winning again. They look like they are poised to really make a break in the American League East as Tony Womack bounces one down the right field line, and he's got himself a 1-out double.
Looking at the numbers on Darryl Kyle, we mentioned the game he started in April at Colorado, an inning and 2/3. He gave up 11 runs, lost 13-0 in May to the Dodgers, and then just 2 starts ago, he gave up 6 earned runs and 4 2/3 against the White Sox. You take away those 3 outings, I mean, his ERA is in the 2s, 11-6 overall, heading for his 12th win tonight. I mean, that's exactly what St. Louis was hoping for.
Stayed 1-0 on Hanley Frias. On the other side of things, a dreadful performance from Armando Reynoso as he gives up 8 runs in 5 innings. He walks 4. Gives up the 3-run home run to Thomas Howard, who's got 4 RBIs tonight. Just didn't have it from the outset tonight, but the Diamondbacks needed some innings because they traded away 2 relievers in the Schilling deal today. Now the ball to short. Look at Renteria. Big scoop at first, but safe is Frias. Ron Culpa, the first base umpire, says that Eduardo Perez lost contact with the bag.
Coming into tonight, only one team better defensively in the National League than the St. Louis Cardinals, and you can see why there on the play by Edgar Renteria. He not only takes a base hit away, it looks like, from Hanley Frias, but look at the pick on the part of Eduardo Perez. He doesn't come up with that ball. Then Womack gets to third, then Frias gets to second, and the double play is not in order. Look at him come up with that throw right there. Outstanding. He said that Perez come off the bag with his foot, but it didn't look like it.
First and second with a 1-out for Luis Gonzalez, who's already got a home run in this game. So the Diamondbacks try to creep back into it. The exaggerated open stance from Gonzalez. More and more players going to it. We talked about Tony Batista earlier. Nobody's got an open stance like he does, but you hardly see anybody with a pronounced closed stance these days. Everybody's opening up. And around, and he's in the hole 0-2.
Well, Gonzo told me that he got the idea on opening his stance up while watching Tony Batista last year as a teammate. Talked to him about it. What's your reasoning for it? It's all about style. That's all that is. Once Batista gets to the point where he's ready to swing the bat, well, it goes back to technique, and he's right where everybody else is. It's just an unorthodox way of getting there, as is the stance of Luis Gonzalez.
Batista was struggling in winter ball a couple of years ago. His team was winning big. Everybody had a hit except him. And he said, I'm just going to try something really unconventional. Now, his stance is so open, he is facing the pitcher with the bat held out right in front of him. and he got a hit, and he got another one, and the next day he got a couple of more, and he has stayed with it ever since, and he has become, despite the fact he's only about 180 pounds, one of the better power hitters in the game the last couple of years. Two on Gonzalez with a Womack at second. He can fly, and Frias at first. Only one out. Inside.
I think Matheny might have went to the mound there because Tony Womack had been down at second base for 5 or 6 pitches. He's going to give a sequence of signs with a man on second. You can't just put one down as if you do with nobody on base. Womack had seen those sequences several times. He might want to change it. Or Matheny might have got the idea to do that was watching Luis Gonzalez take a curveball earlier in the count down. Darryl Kyle, curveball is something that if you don't know it's coming, you've got to make an effort like you're going to get it. Well, Gonzalez just completely disregarded it, and that's when Matheny went out right away.
Matheny told me Darryl Kyle thinks like a catcher. He's very precise in what he wants to do. He's always thinking a couple of pitches ahead, a couple of at-bats back to what's happened last time, and he's got a real good idea of what he wants to do out there. And I asked Matheny, so are you just along for the ride following the orders that Kyle's giving? He said, well, it's a combination. It's a good partnership they've developed. A comfort zone has developed between the two of them. And what an opportunity it's been for Matheny to play every day. What an opportunity it's been for Kyle to come to a first-place team and get a chance to rediscover what he had a few years ago.
Matheny doesn't even care about his offense, does he? He just wants to get that starting pitcher deep into the game.
Well, he had a sparkle in his eye when he was talking about the home run off Randy Johnson last night, though, and you can give him that one because it was also Matheny who was robbed by Steve Finley earlier in the game. That incredible catch, but he got his back later on against the big unit. Good battle here between Kyle and Gonzalez. The count's still 1-2 as Luis Gonzalez fouls off pitch after pitch. And another one.
Talking with Darryl Kyle before the game. In this situation here, you'd like to get the ground ball. Get it at somebody, the double play, and go sit down. But he says, you know, I'm just not a sinker ball type guy. I've never been able to get the ball, have any kind of downward movement with my fastball. It's going to run in on the left-handed hitter.
There's a high chopper. Vina with a good aggressive play to force Frias to the bag. So it's Diamondbacks on the corners with 2 outs. Tomorrow night here on ESPN2, coverage of the great outdoor games begins.
ESPN and ESPN
Individual events from 5 different venues, and it all begins tomorrow night here on ESPN2, and it runs through the next couple of weeks on both ESPN and ESPN2. Funny spots too that have been running for a few weeks, promoting the great outdoor games here on the family of ESPN networks. As Steve Finley comes up, it's 8-1 St. Louis in the 6th inning. Couple of ground outs for Finley tonight. And the ground ball for Vina. He has made a lot of good plays here tonight. The inning is over as the Diamondbacks strand a couple, and St. Louis still has a comfortable 7-run lead. At Busch Stadium in St. Louis 8, Arizona 1, bottom of the 6th inning. And after Armando Reynoso was hit hard and then left for a pinch hitter, finally Buck Showalter has turned to the bullpen, and he has brought out a guy who has kind of has reinvented himself the last few years. He's a very good left-handed reliever after having a number of good and then not so good seasons as a starter. Very good years with Cleveland, tough times with Houston to a certain extent, but he's had a nice second career here.
Yeah, an outstanding year back in 1988 with Cleveland, an 18-game winner with the Indians. Had to turn it around, though. Had to make some adjustments. He lost that velocity on his fastball. His arm still felt good. Physically, he could pitch. He was just not the power pitcher that he was as a starting pitcher. Has gone to the location, throws a few more breaking balls now than he did when he was that power type pitcher, and because of it, he's still a very successful big league pitcher, just in a different role.
Top of the order coming up for the Cardinals, beginning with second baseman Fernando Vina. 1 for 3 tonight. Singleton scored back in the first. Cardinals have 8 runs on 10 hits. The Diamondbacks just 1 run on 4 hits. Back to the Schilling deal. If he comes in and Randy Johnson, Brian Anderson's pitching well, if the bullpen doesn't get overworked, when you look at the experience of Swindell and Plesac from the left side, Matt Manti looks like he's coming back. The young Hyun Kim was incredible until a couple of weeks ago. Had some mechanical problems. Looks like they've started to get that ironed out. Mike Morgan can eat up innings. It's got the potential to be an outstanding bullpen.
Absolutely. You've got the 2 left-handers with all the experience to come in to get those particular outs that you need. And then Manti back to his form that he had last year.
Mile-high pop-up off the bat of Vigna. And down the line, they got pretty close to one another as Vigna runs around Durazo. And so even though things haven't gone well for Arizona tonight or last night or the 2 days before that, all in all, it's a good day because they got a great starting pitcher in the deal.
Yeah, it really is. But I think their big concern right now is that of what they have offensively at the corners. Durazo had the wrist problems, but he is back now. They need him to pick up the slack where he was last year. I mean, he was a big-time run producer. The same thing has to happen for Matt Williams. I mean, Matt has just got to get his legs back underneath him. And whether it's best for him out there now or whether it's best for him to rest. Obviously, if they had a big lead, they'd shut him down.
Right.
And they would get him ready to go into the postseason. But, hey, there's a horse race now. They can't do that.
And because of what Matt Williams has accomplished and the kind of a leader and person that he is, if he says, I'm just going to play through it, then they're going to let him play through it.
Well, you know what? He's always been a guy that's accountable. And he realizes that he's making a lot of money. He's done a lot of things with that money. He's deferred money, as has Jay Bell, so that they could bring in the big unit. Todd Stottlemyre, Reynoso.
Fly ball to deep center field. Back to the edge of the track to make the catch is Finley as Renteria is retired to 2 down. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of the Office of the Commissioner of Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent. And for more on Major League Baseball, go to MajorLeagueBaseball.com for the most complete baseball coverage on the internet. 2 outs and nobody on in the bottom of the 6th inning, and Jim Edmonds is the batter, and he has had a good night. A couple of hits, including a double, driven in a run and scored twice. A guy who in Anaheim developed a bit of a reputation for maybe not using all of his ability, and even some of his teammates spoke openly about it at times. And every now and again he seemed like kind of an isolated guy in that clubhouse, but you haven't heard any of that since he came to St. Louis. Just a highlight reel out in center field. Great line drive hitter, has developed more power, hitting for an average. Striking out a ton this year, but given everything else that he's doing, it's not really effective. And there's another line drive, and Edmonds has his 3rd hit of the night.
The strikeouts, they just don't seem to matter anymore, do they? Remember when a hitter would get 2 strikes and he would spread out with his stance, he'd choke up about halfway up on the bat,
Go the other way?
Oh yeah, just try to put it in play. You know, there are still certain guys that do that, but for the most part, these guys that are putting up big numbers, I mean, they take the same swing with 2 strikes that they do with no count on.
Russell Branyan of the Cleveland Indians, who's got enormous power, strikes out better than 40% of the time, and I asked him if that bothers him, and he said, you know what, if the home runs and the RBIs are there, what does it matter? And he's got a point.
Think about John Bowles, the manager of the Florida Marlins, and what he told his slugger Preston Wilson. He said, you just keep swinging, because when you do make contact, you make a lot of damage.
And there's Edmonds whiffing a lot of it, doing a lot of damage when he does make contact, hitting well over 300 with big power. Just think about, again, 20 years ago, how many players there were Brett Butler types. Get the bunt down, slap it the other way, do anything you can just to get on a base and set the table. There aren't that many like that anymore. look around at the home run totals for leadoff hitters these days, and you'll find a lot of them already with 15 homers.
I'm telling you, it's McGuire's fault. He hit 70, had the whole world watching, had commercials that talked about chicks digging the long ball, and everybody wants to be a part of it.
Three and one, the count on Tatis. Here's a guy, Tatis, who before he came to St. Louis in about half a season with Texas, hit 3 home runs. That's only 2 years ago. Now he's got tremendous power. Everybody's bulking up. The hitters are getting stronger. The strike zone's gotten smaller. The ballparks have gotten smaller. And the home runs have gone through the roof. You were lucky to get out when you did.
But I didn't get out unscathed. Still gave up 250 or so of them.
And you feel he didn't go. And Tatis will head down to first via the walk for the second time tonight, pushing Edmonds up to second.
Well, Swindell's finding out the same thing that the starting pitcher for Arizona found out, Armando Reynoso, that home plate is just not going to expand tonight. Marty Foster has his zone. He's not going to give you anything just off the plate. Zone's a little bit tighter than most of the big league umpires, but he's been consistent with it. And as a pitcher, you realize you have to adjust.
Ray Langford is the batter. He walked his last time up. Also has a sacrifice fly and a strikeout. There's a strike, 0-1.
It just makes me think about how good Darryl Kyle is pitching tonight. Only allowed 1 run. That was a solo home run in the first inning. 4 hits on the night. And not getting anything that's not on the plate as a strike. You can see Greg Swindell a little bit frustrated with that pitch there. On the plate, but in Marty Foster's mind, the ball was down. Greg Swindell says, you know what? There's people that call that pitch a strike.
Kyle's only walked 2 tonight. One of them was thrown out trying to steal, and the other one was immediately erased on a double play. So even the walks really haven't hurt him.
Boy, just a defense that St. Louis has been playing all year long, too. That's kind of their secret weapon. Reyna back in the last inning, getting a force out at second base, and then playing as deep as he possibly could on Steve Finley, and able to come up with that ground ball.
There's strike 3 called. Langford knew it. Inning is over as the Cardinals strand a couple, but they've still got a healthy 8-1 lead. Back in St. Louis, where the Cardinals have an 8-1 lead heading to the 7th. They jumped on the Diamondbacks and Armando Reynoso early. Got 3 in the first, 2 in the third, 3 in the 5th. Darryl Kyle has been outstanding tonight as Matt Williams bangs a base hit up the middle to lead off the inning. Williams is now 1 for 3. Let's get another update. Busy studio guy tonight. Here's Dave Repson.
Thanks a lot, Dan. We check in on the Cubs and the Phillies. This is a game that's been delayed by rain, so they're only in the 4th inning at this point. But Sammy Sosa going deep. That's number 30 for him. A 3-run shot made it 7-3 Chicago. That's where it stands right now, Dan.
All right, Dave, thank you. And the Phillies had a busy day off the field as well with the Schilling deal to Arizona. Also dealt Rob Ducey to Toronto. And you would think more to come now that Travis Lee is in the Phillies organization, that maybe Bronya and Gant will be moved between now and the deadline. And Rubio Durazo, ground ball to second. Vina, Renteria, and back to Perez, the double play. Now the outstanding series that is Sports Century continues tomorrow and Friday. On ESPN Classic, the Emmy Award-winning series will look at baseball's all-time home run leader, Hank Aaron, tomorrow night, and then the only man to win MVPs in each league, Frank Robinson. A couple of heavyweights on tap the next couple of nights. To order ESPN Classic, dial 1-800-CLASSIC or call your cable provider. You can see we're not lying. There are a couple of the heavyweights, 1st and 4th all time. And what about that guy running 7th? How long will he play? How high will he climb? As Damian Miller bangs a base hit into right field. McGuire has said if he gets to Willie Mays, if he's healthy enough and effective enough and plays long enough to get up to Willie Mays, then he'll start thinking about Hank Aaron, because even when you get to Willie Mays, you're still 95 home runs away from Hank Aaron.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, you know, I didn't get to watch Hank play, or Willie, obviously, or Babe Ruth, but just the fact that you get to watch McGuire play, and his name is amongst those.
Renteria, the flip to Vigna. These two guys up the middle of the diamond are making it look easy defensively and giving Darryl Kyle all kinds of welcome support. They start him young here in St. Louis. They pack the joint. Everybody wears red. And the kids are having a good time tonight, and why not? The hometown team is up 8-1 heading to the 7th inning. The hometown team is in first right now as the visitors bring in another reliever from the bullpen, Byung-Hyun Kim, who had been the closer for the Diamondbacks until experiencing some control problems, mechanical problems. Matt Manti's come back, has saved a couple, and Kim has had one encouraging outing, had that on the weekend, and they hope he's going to get back to form. Look at the strikeouts to innings pitched. 76 strikeouts in 45 innings.
Well, he's one of those guys that I'm sure Bobby Cox, manager of the Braves, also the guy who chose the pitchers for the National League All-Star team, would like to have had on his staff. Numbers that in the past would have gotten you an invitation to the All-Star game, but did not get the opportunity for Kim to go this year.
Pinch hitter for the Cardinals is Chris Richard. He is hitting for Eduardo Perez here to begin the 7th. Richard, as we mentioned, homered on the first pitch he saw as a big leaguer. He ground out in the first pitch he sees tonight. And he knows he's only a Cardinal until J.D. Drew comes back, which could be tomorrow. So a quick night for Richard. At least a quick start to his night, unless he winds up staying in the game. Thomas Howard is going to come up. This guy's been the story. And the defense behind him.
Well, Kyle getting to go to the All-Star game the 3rd time he's been chosen to represent his league.
And there's Thomas Howard, home run and 4 RBIs tonight. Kim, as you've already seen, sidearm, high 80s, low 90s, lots of movement, everything dips and dives. Just 21 years of age. And only signed to a professional contract by the Diamondbacks a year ago, roared through the minors, and then roared through the big leagues through the first 2.5 months of this season. Camp this spring battling for the last spot on the staff, and when Manti opened the season with some bicep tendonitis, Kim pretty quickly became the closer and just overpowered people through the first couple of months before losing his control. Three and 1 the count on Howard. Rips it into center field, but there is Finley for the 2nd out.
Kim called up to the big leagues last year by the Diamondbacks, and just his 6th ball game was ejected. He had a bandage that flew out from his uniform underneath the right sleeve, and he was thrown out of the ball game. And the Cubs first baseman Mark Grace, who was in that ball game, said, you know, you got to give Kim a lot of credit. I mean, most guys don't start cheating until later on in their career. But it wasn't actually anything that helped him throw the baseball. It was just something that he had to cover up in there. But when it came out, he had to go.
Mike Matheny, the batter. 2 outs, nobody on. Matheny 1 for 2. My favorite story about Kim is a few years ago when he's pitching for Korea in the Asian Games, and they reached the championship game. And he is told that if he wins the game, he will have his mandatory military service deferred. Now that's pressure, knowing that you get out of your Army stint if you win the ball game, and he won it. And that's why he was freed up at such a young age to come over to North America, and here he is in the big leagues at only the age of 21. Here's the guy who just might have gotten his closer's job back at the very least. What a duo Buck Showalter has. If Manti's arm problems are okay, and if Kim's control problems are okay, and Kim was better than okay this inning. The Cardinals are gone in the 7th.
ESPN2's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Keystone Light, America's Never Bitter beer, and by Quikrete Concrete Products. No one makes it easier than Quikrete.
Well, nothing like a good seat and a freebie to put a smile on a young man's face at the ball game. Not to mention that the home team is up 7 heading to the 8th inning. It's 8-1 for the Cardinals behind the strong right arm of Darryl Kyle. Chris Richard, after pinch hitting, will stay in the game at first base. And a pinch hitter up for the Diamondbacks right now. This is Greg Colbert. And that'll sneak under the glove of Renteria into left center, a base hit.
Record of 11-6, a little bit deceiving. Had Darryl Kyle received a little bit more run support, 11 win total could be a lot higher than that. 4.8 runs on the year coming into tonight's game for Darryl Kyle. That's the lowest total of any St. Louis Cardinal starter.
Heathcliff Slocum is now throwing in the Cardinals' pen. Kyle right about 100 pitches right now.
Well, he established that fastball on the inner half of the plate. You know in the back of your mind he's always got the curveball, but he moved a couple of guys off the plate, and now the last couple of times he's just simply been able to go away, change speeds out there, and he's gotten a lot of ground balls. That really has been one of the most amazing things about Dave Duncan and his pitching coach career. He took guys when he was in Oakland that were having problems. Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley, Bob Welch, got them turned around. And now he's done the same thing with Darryl Kyle. Pat Hinken struggled last year. Andy Bennis struggled once he left St. Louis. You think about Kent Bottenfield last year. How did he win 18 games? Well, what Dave Duncan did was convince him, you're not a fastball pitcher. You have got to throw off-speed stuff when you're behind in the count. He did just the opposite with Darryl Kyle. You are a fastball. You have to establish, and for the most part all year, Kyle has done that.
2-1 the count, and it's slapped foul off the bat of Womack. 2 balls and 2 strikes. There might be as many as 28 teams, maybe 27 now, with Schilling coming to Arizona, who are out there looking for starting pitching. But the St. Louis Cardinals know they don't have to go out and get a starting pitcher. The Seattle Mariners know they don't have to go out and get a starting pitcher. And Arizona may feel that way now. But as Tony La Russa says, there are still other needs they want to address. But what a luxury to not have to be in the market looking for a starter when so many other teams are trying to get the very same thing. Back to Kyle. Renteria never comes up with the ball, and everybody's safe.
Darryl Kyle throws 2 of the better sinking fastballs of the night. The problem is this one sinks a little bit. Now watch this one sink that he throws to Renteria. Look at the downward movement there. The shortstop looking for something about chest high. He did not get that. Might have been able to hold on to the baseball, but when he tried to hold on to the ball, find the bag, get out of the way of the runner at the same time, he was not able to do any of the 3.
The error on the play is charged to Kyle. So there are runners at first and second with nobody out. And the batter will be Hanley Frias. The Diamondbacks have had some chances tonight against Kyle. Leadoff walk in the 4th, erased on a double play. Had 2 on with an out in the 6th, didn't get anything. Leadoff man erased on a double play in the 7th, and as you can see, this has been a problem for them for a while. They cannot come up with a clutch hit. Going around is Frias. It's 0-2.
Well, there's people that are wondering if last year was a fluke for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Offensively, they had 4 guys with 100 RBIs: Bell, Finley, Gonzalez, and Matt. They had 4 guys that also scored 100 runs: Bell, Finley, Gonzo, and Tony Womack. Matt Williams just missing out with 98 runs scored.
That's all for Frias. Make sure you don't miss pro football's greatest weekend. It all kicks off Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time here on ESPN2 with the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. Inductees include Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, Howie Long, Dan Rooney, and Dave Wilcox. Then Monday at 7 Eastern Time, tune into ABC Sports for the AFC NFC Hall of Fame game. Drew Bledsoe and the Patriots, Jerry Rice and the 49ers, Al, Dan, and Dennis in the booth. Breaking ball to Luis Gonzalez. Just misses 1-0. We talked about the difference in the offense for the Diamondbacks last year to this year, and you can't hang much of it on Steve Finley. He's having a good season. Luis Gonzalez may not be having the great season he had last year, but still hitting pretty well, and that'll help. Get a base hit into right field. Getting the wave home and scoring as the ball comes into second is Colbrin. Around to third goes Womack, and it's 8-2.
Matheny will come out and talk to the starting pitcher, Darryl Kyle. Just try to calm him down a little bit. Darryl visibly upset that the run scored. Knows that not only did he make the mistake on the pitch to Gonzalez to let him drive it in, but he made a bigger mistake back on the ground ball that Tony Womack hit to him. Could have been a double play. And then the strikeout with Frias, the inning over. But because of the error on the throw, the inning continues.
First and third, 1 out for Finley. 0 for 3, all on groundouts tonight. Both Arizona RBIs tonight belong to Luis Gonzalez. The huge difference in the offense for Arizona between last year and this year is Matt Williams, and that's more of an injury thing than anything else. The Diamondbacks, as you can see, coming off a series in Cincinnati when they lost 2 out of 3 and just couldn't get anybody in. Stranding 13 in one game and a 14 in another game. Little flare into left field. Charging is Langford to make the catch. The throw comes home on the fly, and the crowd loves that.
Langford's always had that speed to outrun the baseball. Comes in and gets to it, and then doesn't even hesitate. Makes a strong throw. Don't worry about whether Tony Womack is going to try to score or not. Make the throw and then see what happens.
So 2 outs with men on the corners. And here's Matt Williams. Had a base hit his last time up, but he needs a base hit to bring in a run. He's got only 7 RBIs this season in 140 at-bats. Hits it well into left center field toward the gap, and in the gap at least 1 run will come in. Womack has scored. Gonzalez is getting waved. The relay home, not in time, and Matt Williams drives in 2 to make it 8-4.
Well, just like that trade that they made for Curt Schilling took pressure off the rest of the ball club, it might have taken a little bit off of Matt Williams tonight. He has hit the ball hard all 4 times. And look at Mike Matheny right there. Even with the 4-run lead, 5-run lead before this run came in, trying to do what he can to help the starting pitcher. Gonzalez going hard. Going to be a close play only because Matheny there. See him drop the knee to try to block the plate. Had he been able to come up with the baseball, he might have saved the run and kept Darryl Kyle in the ball game. Instead, Gonzalez was able to knock the ball loose, slide underneath the knee. It might be the end of the night for Darryl Kyle.
Dave Duncan to the mound. Heathcliff Slocum more than ready. Kyle will stay. Darryl Kyle's last start was last Thursday in Arizona against Randy Johnson. And they dueled back and forth through 8 innings with Kyle and the Cardinals holding a 2-1 lead at that point. Tony La Russa went to his closer Dave Veers, and Tony Womack, of all people, hit a game-winning 2-run homer in the bottom of the 9th, denying Kyle the win. Here a little bit more of a comfort zone. Still a 4-run lead. Durazo with a ground ball for Vigna. And that will be the inning. But a previous defensive miscue by Kyle helps lead to 3 Arizona runs, and it's 8-4. The Diamondbacks have made it closer. 8-4, bottom of the 8th. 4th pitcher of the night for Arizona, 38-year-old left-hander Dan Plesac, who will come out to work the bottom of the 8th inning. A left-handed specialist. Rarely works even as much as an inning at a time. And the first batter he's going to face, it turns out, will be Darryl Kyle, because Kyle between innings went to the pitching coach, went to the manager, said, you know what, I make a better throw to second, I get out of the inning, leave me in the game.
And you know what, that's what a #1 starter does. The manager's got to have confidence in him, and if you feel like you've got enough to finish the ball game, you're supposed to tell him, don't be satisfied with just going 8 innings. And that's the way Darryl Kyle has been. I mean, this is their #1 guy. He leads them in wins after tonight. He leads them in game starts, innings, strikeouts. And you go back to his success, or whatever it was, back in the postseason of '97. He lost the game to the Atlanta Braves as a member of the Houston Astros, but pitched well. 7 strong innings, gave up a couple of runs, but was outdueled by Greg Maddux. It's one of those things where Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan, you know, Darryl Kyle knows a lot about them, but now they're getting to know a lot about him.
He has thrown only 1 complete game this season. That was against Kansas City back on June the 7th. And now he's going to run the bases a little bit as Plesac walks him on 4 pitches. Been one of those nights for Buck Showalter. Reynoso didn't have it tonight. He walked 4, gave up 8 runs through 5 innings. Swindell went a shutout inning, but walked a batter. Kim went an inning. And now Plesac here in the 8th. Back to the top of the order for Vigna.
We mentioned earlier that Arizona made a mistake when they traded shortstop at the time, 3rd baseman now Tony Batista, away to the Toronto Blue Jays along with reliever John Frascatore. Well, it was Dan Plesac that they got in return. Plesac did a nice job for him. He's a veteran. He's always tough on left-handed hitters, but he's not going to be an all-star 3rd baseman the next couple of years, which is what Batista looks to be.
The funny part about the trade is Plesac has trouble throwing strikes and will now get a visit. Is it really appeared to be the Blue Jays who were dealing from weakness because Alex Gonzalez was hurt. He had a bad shoulder. They needed a shortstop, so they went out and got a Batista. It was Toronto who appeared to be desperate to fill a need more than Arizona. And Plesac had really struggled in the first couple of months. Buck Showalter seemed content to turn shortstop over to Andy Fox, who has since been traded to Florida. Now Tony Womack, who was a right fielder last year and a second baseman for a few years before that. Now he is the Arizona shortstop.
The thing that Arizona liked most about Plesac was the fact that he's never been on the disabled list. Held left-handed hitters last year to under a 200 average.
He also had never been to the postseason until last year when Arizona won the West, knocked out by the Mets in the first round. And there's his first strike of the night. 3-1 now on Vigna. inside as he walks 2 in a row to begin the inning, and that has been a big problem for him this year. Plesac has now walked 20 in 22 1/3 innings.
You know, I think that the Curt Schilling trade might have taken the Diamondbacks out of this game because, as you mentioned earlier, Dan, they were a little bit short in the bullpen. And after Reynoso gave up 5 runs in the first 3 innings, when he walked 2 guys after getting Jim Edmonds out to lead off the 5th, had Buck Showalter had a strong pin, that might have been it on the night. But instead, he left him in. He was able to retire Eduardo Perez, and then Thomas Howard hit the big 3-run homer that puts us in the position we are now.
Which is 8-4 St. Louis, bottom of the 8th. Edgar Renteria takes it outside, ball 1. Renteria's got a couple of hits and a couple of runs scored tonight. Jim Edmonds is 3 for 4. And Thomas Howard has been the biggest hitter tonight with a 3-run home run and an RBI single. And he's only starting, remember, because J.D. Drew's still on the DL and Eric Davis has the flu. Making the most of his chance to get in there. Down to third. There's one, and across the diamond for the double play. Going to change the complexion of the inning in a hurry.
And it will change the pace at which Mike Morgan is warming up in the bullpen now for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Before that last pitch, I mean, he was going as quick as he could. Now he'll probably be able to relax a little bit. What was it, the 3rd inning when he was up about
back when
2 hours ago?
We have come full circle in the Arizona bullpen tonight.
I mean, that's asking a lot out of anybody, let alone a guy that's been around as long as Mike has.
Jim Edmonds, the batter, already 3 for 4. Morgan describes himself as a freak of nature. He says, I don't have to ice my arm. It never hurts. I'm just lucky. Done something right to have a 22-year major league career.
Well, he's kept that desire to prepare to play. All of us have the desire to play, but you lose that desire to go out and, you know, run 5 miles a day, lift all the weights you got to do. And Mike has just never lost that. Always in good shape.
2-0 the count on Edmonds. It was Edmonds who faced Plesac in last night's game and drew a walk. Plesac came out. Russ Springer came in and gave up the grand slam to Fernando Tatis. St. Louis won 7-3 last night, leading 8-4 tonight. Tomorrow night, Rick Ankiel against Geraldo Guzman to wrap up the series. And Arizona is off to Florida. St. Louis is headed to New York to take on the Mets.
You can see Plesac, as everybody that has come in tonight for Arizona has done, taking a second look at home plate umpire Marty Foster and his strike zone.
Third walk he's given up this inning. 2 on and 2 out as we send you back to Dave Revson, who's got another update.
Okay, Dan, Marlins and the Braves. John Rocker trying to close things out, facing Luis Castillo with a couple runners on, and Rocker picking up his first save since June 23rd as the Braves win it by the final of 6-3. Dan.
All right, Dave, thank you. Dan Plesac just couldn't find the strike zone at 3 walks in the inning. He will leave. Pitching change coming up as Mike Morgan will come in for the Diamondbacks. Back to St. Louis. Dan Shulman and Rick Sutcliffe with you. It's the Cardinals leading the Diamondbacks 8-4. It was 8-1 until an inning ago. Arizona making it a little bit closer. An error by Darryl Kyle leading to 3 unearned runs, but now the Cardinals threatening to add to their lead with 2 on and 2 out. Mike Morgan on to face Fernando Tatis. Mike Morgan, as we mentioned, with his 12th major league team. He was a teammate of Buck Showalter's in AA 19 years ago.
42-year-old veteran. Part of the reason Buck might have kept him around is that he makes this veteran ball club of Arizona feel young. There's a lot of these guys 10 years in the big leagues that watched Mike when they were in high school.
I'll tell you what, he was in the major leagues before young Kim was born. Kim is 21, and Morgan was a week out of high school back in 1978 when he was rushed to the majors with the Oakland A's. I wonder even if he could rhyme off all 12 teams he's played for.
I bet he could. He's still got that same enthusiasm, too, that he had as an 18-year-old.
3-1 the count on Tatis.
Buck said earlier this spring, he said the reason I kept him is because I knew what I was getting. A guy that will take the ball at any time, throw as long as you want, one of those staff saver type guys. And you just look at the pace at which Mike Morgan works. He's always a guy that works quick, and he's normally a guy that throws strikes. Going to have his bat out. He's going to hit hard from time to time, but you know what you're going to get. He's going to come in and make something happen.
3-2. Into center field, caught by Finley, and the inning is over. 8-4 St. Louis, and on to the 9th as Kyle comes out to try to finish what he started. Darryl Kyle won the argument an inning ago with Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan. They allowed him to stay in and hit in his spot, and they've allowed him to come out here consequently and try to finish what he started, looking for his second complete game of the season. Of the 4 runs that he has allowed, 3 of them unearned on his own throwing error last inning.
It would be the 5th complete game of the year for the Cardinals, and that would tie their high of all of last year.
And the difference a year makes in the starting rotation. And what a difference a rotation can make and how the whole team looks. That's what Rick was referring to. They are an inning away from matching last season's total. It's still better than 2 months to go. Just a little bit low. 3-0. And Damian Miller, and just in case, Cliff Slocum, who was off last inning, continues to throw. If Kyle gets the win, it'll be his 12th, and it'll pull him into a 3-way tie for second in the National League with Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux. 3 back of Randy Johnson. 3-2. David Wells became the first 16-game winner in the majors today. Miller, Batista, and the pitcher spot due up here in the 9th inning. Smoked into the left field corner. Played quickly out there by Langford. Throws way off line. Miller will stop at second.
It looks like that's probably going to be it. Darryl Kyle convinced Dave Duncan and Tony La Russa to send him back out there. They said, look, you get the first 3 guys out, you'll have that complete game. If not, we're going to have to come get you.
And that's what Duncan's doing. Here comes Slocum. It's 8-4. Leadoff man aboard and nobody out of the 9th. Darryl Kyle couldn't complete it, but he has certainly put the Cardinals in a position to win it, going 8 innings plus a batter tonight, giving up a double to Damian Miller to start the 9th. Just 1 of the 4 runs earned. And here is Heathcliff Slocum coming into the game to try and protect a 4-run lead. He generally does not work in high-pressure situations these days. Dave Beers is the closer for the Cardinals, and Slocum soaking up some innings when things aren't quite so tense.
And Dave Beers might not be available tonight. Tony La Russa told me before the game that he actually has had some spasms in his back. He was trying to pick up a couple of his kids, and Got a little twitch back in there, which we have all done. Problem is, most of us don't have to get major league hitters out. And when you're trying to go out there at less than 100%, as Beers is right now, it becomes real difficult.
And it looks like that's the case, as Matt Morris is the insurance policy right now. Darryl Kyle looking on from the dugout. The Cardinals 3 outs away from their second consecutive win over Arizona, and from extending their lead over Cincinnati. The Reds losing earlier today to Houston. Strike taken by Danny Batista. The St. Louis win, and they'll have a 7.5 game lead on the Reds. And Arizona lost, and once again they'll have to wait for the outcome of the Giants-Padres game to see if they're still alone in first or tied for first. And right now we've got a 1-0 San Diego lead in the 5th. Swing and a miss, 1-2.
Slocum always had a lot of movement to his pitches. Nothing he throws is straight. His fastball will run away from a right-handed hitter. A little sinking fastball he can run back from time to time, but a lot of sliders. On to not only try to hold a 4-run lead for St. Louis, but preserve the 12th win of the year for Darryl Kyle. Last time the Cardinals had a 20-game winner, way back in 1985. John Tudor and Joaquin Andujar.
Inside, 3-2. Crowd getting a little restless now. Slocum at one point a closer with Boston, and again with Seattle. Tony La Russa unable to sit down and to watch this one unfold here in the 9th inning. It was a laugher an inning ago, but it's not looking quite so funny right now, especially if Batista can reach.
Well, you thought with an 8-run output, the St. Louis Cardinals had this game at hand. They had a couple of opportunities to even add more back in the 6th, back in the 8th inning, but not able to do any more damage since the 5th. And because of that, Arizona getting a little bit of momentum into their dugout. It's been a while since they've had any of that.
Into right center field, and it'll be caught by Howard as Batista chased what would have been ball 4. Schedule that Joe Garagiola, the GM of the Diamondbacks, referred to earlier when he was asked about the trade. He said, well, look at who we have to play. A couple of series each with the Dodgers and Giants, the 2 teams closest to them in the standings. Very few off days. No such thing as too much pitching.
But don't you think that's the way it should be? I mean, divisions should be decided in the month of September between themselves.
And more of an unbalanced schedule will be in effect next year, when teams will play even more games within their own division. The pinch hitter is Alex Cabrera. Cabrera, a fascinating story, a guy who was not affiliated with anybody for a couple of years, was playing in Taiwan. Diamondbacks picked him up, sent him down to the minors at the beginning of this season. He hit 35 home runs at Double-A by the end of June. And they called him up, and he homered as a pinch hitter in his first major league at-bat. Then he tripled in his first at-bat the next night. The Diamondbacks have had a way the last couple of years of finding players that maybe other teams looked past, like a Rubio Durazo and Alex Cabrera and Geraldo Guzman, a starting pitcher for them, who was completely out of baseball for 7 years, working as a carpenter until 2 years ago, and now he's in a starting rotation for a first-place team. So it's not all Jerry Colangelo throwing the money around. There are some other key parts of this team as well. Line drive into center field for the second out. If it holds up, St. Louis will expand its lead to 7.5 on the Reds, who were just swept by the Houston Astros.
Well,
looking for win number 12. He'd go to 12-6 if Slocum can finish it off. Reynoso would fall to 7-7. The big story, of course, the Diamondbacks acquiring Curt Schilling. That's the main story for Arizona here tonight. The big story for St. Louis, another good start. They just keep getting them. There it is.
Just an outstanding start for Darryl Kyle tonight. His 12th win of the year. 7 terrific innings. Ran into a little bit of trouble in the 8th, but already had enough offense to pick up the victory.
The final score from Busch Stadium: the Cardinals 8 and the Diamondbacks 4. Kyle over Reynoso. Thomas Howard with a home run and 4 RBIs. The big hitter for St. Louis tonight as Slocum finishes it off in the 9th inning. Don't miss Sunday night of baseball over on ESPN. The Chicago White Sox, led by Big Frank Thomas, travel to Anaheim to take on to the Angels at 8 Eastern Sunday on ESPN. Coming up next, it's NBA Summer Hoops. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network at Go.com. For Rick Sutcliffe, I'm Dan Schulman, and thanks for watching. St. Louis wins. Next up, it's NBA Summer Hoops.